Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. True to his world, Hades, or sometimes known as Minato, trained Naruto for the summer, and it was getting to the time where Naruto would return to Camp Half-Blood and the rest of his friends. Naruto had grown some and he was more lean and muscular. Something his girlfriends would love. That was another thing that baffled him. He had 3 girlfriends that knew about each other, and they didn't mind. Well, they fought occasionally, but that was expected. There was Talia, daughter of the thunder god, Zeus. A punk-style girl that he got along with rather well with her brave personality. Clarice, the daughter of the war god, Ares. She was pretty cool and tough, that was why he liked her. Something though, she could be a bit overbearing and he was just fine with that. Finally, there was Selena, daughter of the love goddess, Aphrodite. She was not like the other daughters of his grandmother. She was down to earth and real nice, which was a welcome personality in his books. However, right now, Naruto was not training. He was indulging in one of his favorite pastimes. What would that be? Well, singing, of course. What? He had to stay sane somehow down here in the underworld. Naruto stood on the dead ground with what seemed to be ghosts all around him. He was wearing a black suit, and when he looked up, he smirked as the music began to play. A minotaur's my butler, a cyclops my valet, a centaur draws my chariot that takes me down the way. Naruto began as he made clones to show each thing before they all turned into skeletons. Through a river made of fire to a street that's paved with bones, I got a dozen zombie skeletons to walk me to my throne. In the land of the dead. Heck boy, ain't it grand? I'm the prince of the underworld. 'Cause I hold horror's hand. In the land of the dead, I'm dark side royalty. I'm far renowned in the underground and you can't take that from me. Naruto sang as his suit changed and he had a king's costume on, much like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's. Whoa, whoa, Naruto chorused while ghosts played their part. Whoa, 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 whoa. However, another character, someone Naruto recently met and considered a very sadistic sister, appeared. Her name? Malinoe. She smirked cruelly as she stared at the blonde before bashing him on the head. Ow, 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 ow. Thankfully, Naruto managed to get away and made his way to the underworld's palace and continued his singing, but he stopped at the giant dog and started rubbing her giant stomach. Cerberus, my lapdog, is loyal as can be. He then black flashed to his room. My bed is made of skulls. I'm in the lap of luxury. I've got a dragon's blood jacuzzi, the Gorgons think it's cool. And a 7-headed hydra livin' in my swimming pool. He black flashed away just as said hydra came out to take a bit out him and ended up in the throne room. In the land of the dead. Heck boy, ain't it grand? I'm the prince of the underworld, 'cause I hold horror's hand. He said as he took Malino's hand, who looked pissed and just about crushed it, making him grimace. In the land of the dead, I'm dark side royalty. I'm far renowned in the underground, and you can't take that away from me. No, you can't take that from me. He ended dramatically, much to his stepsister's annoyance. Oh please, I have been around longer than you, so yes I could by killing you. Malinoe replied with her arms crossed. Naruto stared at his half-dark, half-light stepsister and asked with a goofy grin, you wouldn't do that, would you, dear sister? Malino's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. It figured he would do that just to annoy her. However, another cruel smirk appeared on his strange face. Well, dear brother, she began as she put a hand on his face, I could just have my fun with you by torturing you, making you wish you were dead and then having my way with you. Naruto paled and backed up. Sorry, but I am not into bondage and that type of stuff, or with you, and I didn't think you were either. If possible, her smirk grew. I'm not, I just wanted to screw with your mind. She ended with dark sadistic laughter. Naruto sighed dramatically. She always got one on him, but damn, that was scary. Alright, that's enough, you two. Came a voice behind him. They looked to see Persephone smiling at them. She was another one of Naruto's relatives, and like Nyx and Aphrodite, she had him call her mom as well. She was a tall, beautiful, young woman with pale skin, flowing, and curled black hair, and wore a white dress, that due to Naruto's presence, was actually colorful like the summer, even though it was nearing winter. Next to her was a red-haired woman in a blue kimono with orange for the outlines. This was Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's birth mom. Hey moms. Man, that is still weird to say. So what is up? Your father wants to talk with you. He thinks it is time for you to return to your friends. Kushina said with a smile. Really? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. That time already. Apparently so, little brother. Malinoe replied with a smirk as they walked to their father's throne, which was still huge. They looked up and saw that Hades was in his menacing giant form. Naruto looked up boredly and replied, "Yo, how's the weather up there?" Hades just rolled his massive eyes. "Son, it is time for you to return to Camp Half-Blood. Zeus may not be happy that I trained you, with some help from your mothers and sister, but I don't care what he thinks anymore." Naruto snickered at this. "However, you will not return directly to there. I think you should help your friends out in Maine first." "Maine? Why the hell did they go there?" Naruto asked. "Simple, to pick up your brother and sister." Hades replied. "You mean the two from the casino?" "The very same, but they have not aged that much. I think you friends ran into trouble, that is why I am sending you there. Plus, I made a shortcut so you can get there quickly via U-Hell bike." Hades replied, mentioning the motorcycle Naruto had been working on. He had finished it and now was the time to use it. Also, Lady Artemis will be making her way there as well. "Please be respectful." "Sweet, I am ready." Naruto replied as seals appeared over his body and his clothes changed. He now wore black pants, black biker boots, a black wife beater under a black leather jacket, black fingerless gloves, and in his hands was a black helmet, with a picture of a skull on it. "I'll go get Tear and be on my way." "Yeah, say ya later little brother, it is going to be a lot more boring without you here." Malinoe stated, almost sadly. "Don't worry sis, I'll be back." Naruto replied as he walked out of the room with a kind smile. Dr. Thorne laughed at the small group of demigods and a satyr. Percy knew they were in deep. He looked to Talia, Annabeth, his satyr friend Grover, and the two new half-bloods, Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. He knew he should rely on his friend, but he really wished Naruto was here. Now do you see how hopeless it is? Yield, little heroes. They were trapped between a monster and a fully armed helicopter. They had no chance. Then Percy heard a clear, piercing sound. The call of a hunting horn blowing in the woods. The manticore froze. For a moment, no one moved. There was only the swirl of snow and wind and the chopping of the helicopter blades. "No," Dr. Thorne said. "It cannot be." His sentence was cut short when something shot past Percy's head like a streak of moonlight. A glowing silver arrow sprouted from Dr. Thorne's shoulder. He staggered backward, wailing in agony. "Curse you!" Thorne cried. He unleashed his spikes, dozens of them at once, into the woods where the arrow had come from, but just as fast, silvery arrows shot back in reply. It almost looked like the arrows had intercepted the thorns in midair and sliced them in two, but Percy felt like his eyes must have been playing tricks on him. No one, not even Apollo's kids at camp, could shoot with that much accuracy. Well, maybe Naruto could deflect projectiles that fast, but the manticore pulled the arrow out of his shoulder with a howl of pain. His breathing was heavy. Percy tried to swipe at him with his sword, but he wasn't as injured as he looked. He dodged Percy's attack and slammed his tail into the boy's shield, knocking him aside. Then the archers came from the woods. They were girls, about a dozen of them. The youngest was maybe 10. The oldest, about 14, like Percy. They wore silvery ski parkas and jeans, and they were all armed with bows. They advanced on the manticore with determined expressions. "The hunters!" Annabeth cried. Next to the water boy, Talia muttered, "Oh, wonderful." Percy didn't have a chance to ask what she meant. One of the older archers stepped forward with her bow drawn. She was tall and graceful with coppery-colored skin. Unlike the other girls, she had a silver circlet braided into the top of her long dark hair, so she looked like some kind of Persian princess. "Permission to kill, my lady?" They couldn't tell who she was talking to, because she kept her eyes on the manticore. The monster wailed. "This is not fair. Direct interference. It is against the ancient laws." "Not so," another girl said. This one was a little younger than Percy, maybe 12 or 13. She had auburn hair gathered back in a ponytail and strange eyes, silvery yellow like the moon. Her face was so beautiful it made the water boy catch his breath, but her expression was stern and dangerous. "The hunting of all wild beasts is within my sphere. And you, foul creature, are a wild beast." She looked at the older girl with the circlet. "Zoe, permission granted." The manticore growled. "If I cannot have these alive, I shall have them dead." He lunged at Talia and Percy, knowing they were weak and dazed. No, Annabeth yelled, and she charged at the monster. Get back, half-blood, the girl with the circlet said. Get out of the line of fire. But Annabeth leapt onto the monster's back and drove her knife into his mane. The manticore howled, turning in circles with his tail flailing as Annabeth hung on for dear life. Fire, Zoe ordered. No, Percy screamed, but the hunters let their arrows fly. The first caught the manticore in the neck. Another hit his chest. The manticore staggered backward, wailing, "This is not the end, Huntress. You shall pay." And before anyone could react, the monster, with Annabeth still on his back, leapt over the cliff and tumbled into the darkness. Annabeth, Percy yelled. Percy started to run after her, but their enemies weren't done with them. There was a snap 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 from the helicopter, the sound of gunfire. Most of the hunters scattered as tiny holes appeared in the snow at their feet, but the girl with auburn hair just looked up calmly at the helicopter. Mortals, she announced, are not allowed to witness my hunt. However, before she could do anything, the earth started to shake. A voice that sounded like it was coming from the earth itself called out. Please, allow me my lady, it said, and Percy had a feeling he knew that voice. It sounded a lot like his blonde friend. The auburn-haired girl seemed annoyed at first before she sighed. Very well, just make it quick. Thanks, the voice replied as the earth broke open and a motorcycle flew out. It was a black chopper-like bike with elements from Ghost Rider in it. On the bike was a black leather-bound person. His identity was hidden, but Percy just knew, with an entrance like that this was Naruto. He then used the bike as a springboard and jumped higher into the sky, above the helicopter. The bike landed safely on the ground without a scratch on it, and if they looked closely, they would see a small black puppy on the bike. Suddenly, silver chains burst from his person, wrapping themselves around the blades and the body of the helicopter. There was a sudden shift in the wind and the biker spun in midair, spinning the copter around him before releasing it, sending it soaring to the ocean in the distance, making it skip some before disappearing altogether. The biker then took off his helmet to reveal the head of Naruto Uzumaki, then asked, "Anybody see how many times that skipped?" Percy put on a deadpan look before he face-palmed himself. Yep, only Naruto could do something that crazy and then ask such a stupid question. Bianca stared at the blonde in shock. This was same person who gave her the kunai. Sure, he was a bit older, but that was expected from her and her brother being in the casino for so long. He said he was her family. If that was so, she would how they were related, but later. She did not want to make a fool of herself. The hunters then advanced on them. Some of them looking impressed, while others just glared at him. Naruto's sweat dropped and said, "Sorry about that. I just wanted to try something my mom taught me, didn't mean to upstage you." The auburn-haired girl stared at the boy, like seeing if he was trustworthy before replying. "It is no problem, Naruto Uzumaki. I gave you permission to do so. Besides, I wanted to see for myself why the other gods and goddess are so interested in you. Now I see why. You are not the usually emotional type of the children of Hades. I can respect that." Naruto blinked, not expecting an answer like that. He was half expecting to get chewed out. He bowed and said, "Thank you my lady. Glad to see you Naruto." Taliah said as she came up to him and leaned on his shoulder. "You too." Naruto replied with a bright smile, which of course made her smile as well, until one of the hunters came over. The one called Zoe stopped short when she saw Taliah. "You," she said with distaste. "Zoe Nightshade." Taliah's voice trembled with anger. "Perfect timing, as usual. Something I miss?" Naruto asked, but Taliah just waved it off for the moment. Zoe scanned the rest of them, pausing to glare at Naruto because saying, "5 half-bloods and a satyr, my lady." "Yes," the younger girl said. "Some of Chiron's campers, I see." "Annabeth," Percy yelled, the gravity of what happened came back. "You have to let us save her." The auburn-haired girl turned toward the son of Poseidon. "I'm sorry, Percy Jackson, but your friend is beyond help." Percy tried to struggle to his feet, but a couple of the girls held him down. "You are in no condition to be hurling yourself off cliffs," the auburn-haired girl said. "Let me go," Percy demanded. "Who do you think you are?" Naruto face-palmed himself at that. Zoe stepped forward as if to smack Percy, but was saved from the other girl. "No," the other girl ordered. "I sense no disrespect, Zoe. He is simply distraught. He does not understand." The young girl looked at her, her eyes colder and brighter than the winter moon. I am Artemis, she said, goddess of the hunt. Naruto smiled. Oh, so I was right and not making a fool of myself. I am glad Persephone told me about you. Artemis simply nodded. He then gained a thoughtful look. So, sis, you have some of the sharpest eyes. Being the goddess of the hunt, do you happen to know how many times that copter skipped? Ow! Naruto cried as Taliah smacked her boyfriend on the back of the head. What was that for? Don't ask the goddess of the hunt such a stupid question. Taliah replied, a little annoyed but still smiled at her boyfriend. Alright, Naruto sighed. Zoe saw this and merely raised an eyebrow, but said nothing for the moment. However, the blonde swore her heard Grover mention that he was whipped. Okay. Percy replied as he stared at Artemis in disbelief. It was odd for him to see a goddess as a kid. However, his brain was still trying to process everything that was going on. However, before he could say any more on getting Annabeth back, Naruto stopped him. The blonde put a hand on his shoulder and said, I am sorry I was late, but I promise you, we'll get our friend, no matter what. We'll just ask to get a quest back at camp. And if we can't, Percy asked, then we'll see if we can tag along with who even does get a quest. Naruto replied nonchalantly before he noticed the state Grover was in. Grover? You okay, buddy? Grover's face was red and he knelt on the ground in front of Artemis. Thank you, Lady Artemis. You're so, wow. Naruto shook his head at that because Artemis looked a little uncomfortable. Get up, goat boy. Taliah snapped. With Annabeth gone, we have to find a way to save her. Whoa, Bianca D'Angelo said. Hold up, time out. Everybody looked at her. She pointed her finger at all of them in turn, like she was trying to connect the dots. Who are you people? Artemis's expression softened. It might be a better question, my dear girl, to ask who are you? Who are your parents? Bianca glanced nervously at her brother, who was still staring in awe at Artemis. Then her eyes went to Naruto, something that Artemis picked up on. Our parents are dead, Bianca said. We're orphans. There's a bank trust that pays for our school, but... She paused as she took out a kunai, which made them gasp. However, back in the casino, Naruto gave this to me. The other looked in shock. The bank thing was odd enough, but the kunai? That was different. Bianca seemed to pick up on this. What? She demanded. I'm telling the truth. Yeah, I gave it to her while saying that family should stick together. Naruto said with a shrug. However, most thought he was talking about the camp in general. Not a brother-sister thing. Bianca was hoping that was the case though, however Zoe spoke. You are a half-blood, Zoe Nightshade said. Her accent was hard to place. It sounded old-fashioned, like she was reading from a really old book. One of thy parents was mortal. The other was an Olympian. An Olympian? Athlete? No, Zoe said. One of the gods. Cool, said Nico. No. Bianca's voice quavered. This is not cool. Nico danced around like he needed to use the restroom. Does Zeus really have lightning bolts that do 600 damage? Does he get extra movement points for? Nico, shut up. Bianca put her hands to her face. This is not your stupid mythomagic game, okay? There are no gods. Hey, Nico, I am not sure about the point system, but Zeus' toy of mass destruction is like setting off multiple nuclear explosions. Whoa, Nico replied in awe while everyone's sweat dropped at how casually Naruto had said that. However, Percy saw how badly Bianca was talking this and felt sorry for her. However, Taliah was in the same boat and spoke. Bianca, I know it's hard to believe, but the gods are still around. Trust me, they're immortal. And whenever they have kids with regular humans, kids like us, well, our lives are dangerous. Dangerous, Bianca said, like the girl who fell. Taliah turned away. Even Artemis looked pained. Naruto wisely stayed quiet. Do not despair for Annabeth, the goddess said. She was a brave maiden. If she can be found, I shall find her. Then why won't you let us go look for her? Percy asked. She is gone. Can't you sense it, son of Poseidon? Some magic is at work. I do not know exactly how or why, but your friend has vanished. Artemis replied. I am with Artemis on this one. Naruto replied sadly. When I was high in the air, I didn't see them down below. Think about it, if she was in the water, wouldn't you be able to feel that? Percy looked out on the water below and sighed. The blonde ninja was right, like usual. Yeah, you're right, and I guess you would know if she was dead. Got that right. Naruto replied, and many understood what they meant, except for Nico and Bianca. the former of which didn't really catch on. Ooh, Nico raised his hand. What about Dr. Thorn? That was awesome how you shot him with arrows. Is he dead? He was a manticore, Artemis said. Hopefully he is destroyed for now, but monsters never truly die. They reform over and over again, and they must be hunted whenever they reappear. Or they'll hunt us, Talia said. Bianca D'Angelo shivered. That explains, Nico, you remember last summer, those guys who tried to attack us in the alley in DC? And that bus driver, Nico said. The one with the ram's horns. I told you that was real. That's why Grover has been watching you, Percy said. To keep you safe, if you turned out to be half-bloods. He then looked at Naruto. Although Naruto seemed to be already in the know. What? I had a feeling, Naruto replied. Zoe saw the look in the blonde's eyes. He was NTO telling the whole truth, but she left it alone, for now. Grover? Bianca stared at him. You're a demigod? Well, a satyr, actually. He kicked off his shoes and displayed his goat. Looked like she was going to faint right there. Grover, put your shoes back on, Talia said. You're freaking her out. Hey, my hooves are clean. Grover replied. Yeah, but she is still trying to process all of this. Naruto offered, making the satyr sigh. Bianca, Percy said, we came here to help you. You and Nico need training to survive. Dr. Thorn won't be the last monster you meet. You need to come to camp. Camp? She asked. Camp Half-Blood, I said. It's where half-bloods learn to survive and stuff. You can join us, stay there year-round if you like. Sweet, let's go, said Nico. Wait, Bianca shook her head. I don't. There is another option, Zoe said. No, there isn't, Talia said. Talia and Zoe glared at each other. Naruto looked at them and could tell what happened between them. He knew what Artemis did, with girls only. Talia must have rejected her in such a way to piss of the raven-haired girl. Oh boy. Naruto sighed and Artemis seemed to share his thought. We've burdened these children enough, Artemis announced. Zoe, we will rest here for a few hours. Raise the tents. Treat the wounded. Retrieve our guests' belongings from the school. Yes, my lady. And, Bianca, come with me. I would like to speak with you. What about me? Nico asked. Artemis considered the boy. Perhaps you can show Grover how to play that card game you enjoy. I'm sure Grover would be happy to entertain you for a while, as a favor to me? Grover just about tripped over himself getting up. You bet. Come on, Nico. Nico and Grover walked off toward the woods, talking about hit points and armor ratings and a bunch of other geeky stuff. Naruto inwardly chuckled at that before he looked to Artemis and asked, Lady Artemis, I know what you will ask of her, but may I speak with her for a moment? Artemis considered the boy and saw that his eyes were telling the truth. He just wanted to speak with the girl and let her make her own choice. Very well. Just don't be too long, son of Hades. Naruto bowed in thanks as he then led the girl a little away from the main group. He could tell the groups were not happy. The girl named Zoe seemed to be very weary of him. It looked like she wanted to bar Bianca from him for a moment. Her eyes spoke of deep mistrust. From him or men in general, he was not sure. What did you want to speak with me about? Bianca asked. He looked the girl over for a moment. She was a cute girl, around 12 while he was 16. He had heard the story from his father and felt sorry for her. Being that casino for that long while the world changed completely while you were gone. He could also easily tell that her and Nico were children of Hades. He wanted to hug his sister but settled for putting on the girl's shoulder. Okay, listen. I know what Artemis will ask of you. I may not like it, but it is your choice. It is your life after all. Naruto stated. Why are you telling me this? Asked the girl, though she had a feeling as to what it was. Her suspicions were proven correct when he whispered something in her ear, making her eyes widen. Back with the others, the hunters began unpacking their knapsacks and making camp. Zoe gave Talia one more evil look, then left to oversee things. As soon as she was gone, Talia stamped her foot in frustration. The nerve of those hunters. They think they're so, arg. I'm with you, Percy said. I don't trust. Oh, you're with me? Talia turned on the seaweed brain furiously. What were you thinking back there in the gym, Percy? You'd take on Dr. Thorn all by yourself? You knew he was a monster. If we'd stuck together, we could have taken him without the hunters getting involved. Annabeth might still be here. Did you think of that? Percy clenched his jaw. He thought of some harsh things to say, and he might have said them too, but then he looked down and saw something navy blue lying in the snow at his feet. Annabeth's New York Yankees baseball cap. Talia didn't say another word. She wiped a tear from her cheek, turned, and marched off, leaving him alone with a trampled cap in the snow to wait for Naruto to get done talking with Bianca. Said blonde came over to the girl a few minutes later and saw that she was upset. "Penny for your thoughts? Percy is an idiot," Talia replied. "I know, but he is learning." Naruto sighed. "He may be stubborn at times, but he will learn soon enough to calm down and think." "Yeah, well, it better be soon," Talia replied with a scowl before she looked at the blonde and smiled. He was leaning on a tree, observing the scene before them. "I missed you." "Really?" Naruto asked. "Yeah, I got a boyfriend and then a few weeks later, he leaves to train." "Of course I missed you and I know Clarice won't admit it, but so did she." "Hell, Selena did too," Talia replied. Naruto smiled. "I am sorry, but I did it to fight better to protect and fight with you all." "I figured as much, you idiot," she said before she leaned over and kissed him on the lips. The hunters set up their camping site in a matter of minutes. 7 large tents, all of silver silk, curved in a crescent around one side of a bonfire. One of the girls blew a silver dog whistle, and a dozen white wolves appeared out of the woods. They began circling the camp like guard dogs. The hunters walked among them and fed them treats, completely unafraid. Falcons watched the group from the trees, their eyes flashing in the firelight, obviously keeping watch as well. Even the weather seemed to bend to the goddess's will. The air was still cold, but the wind died down and the snow stopped falling, so it was almost pleasant sitting by the fire. However, Percy didn't feel that way. He was feeling guilt about Annabeth. Naruto did say that they would get her back, but he had his doubts. He just felt down about it all. He couldn't believe Annabeth was gone. And as angry as he was at Talia, he had a sinking feeling that she was right. "It was my fault." What had Annabeth wanted to tell him in the gym? Something serious, she'd said. Now he might never find out. He thought about how they had danced together for half a song, and my heart felt even heavier. Stupid school dance. He peered over at Talia and Naruto. They were both fearless and brave in his opinion, and it sort of made him jealous. He saw as they kissed and he sighed. He still didn't know if he felt that way with Annabeth. She was a good friend and it was confusing. However, he couldn't help but be happy for them. Talia was tree for so long and then Naruto came around. He usually helped everyone he could. He watched as they walked with the wolves without fear. However, his attention was cut off as one of the hunters came over and dropped his bag in front of him. The Grover and Nico came over to tend to his wounds. While that was going on, Nico rummaged through his own bag, which the hunters had apparently packed for him, though how they'd snuck into Westover Hall unseen, nobody knew. Nico laid out a bunch of figurines in the snow, little battle replicas of Greek gods and heroes. Percy recognized Zeus with a lightning bolt, Ares with a spear, Apollo with his sun chariot. "Big collection," Percy said. Nico grinned. "I've got almost all of them, plus their holographic cards. Well, except for a few really rare ones." "You've been playing this game a long time?" "Just this year." "Before that?" He knit his eyebrows. "What?" Percy asked. "I forget." "That's weird." Nico looked unsettled, but it didn't last long. "Hey, can I see that sword you were using?" Percy decided to show him Riptide, and explained how it turned from a pen into a sword just by uncapping it. "Cool. Does it ever run out of ink?" Well, I don't actually write with it." "Are you really the son of Poseidon?" "Well, yeah. Can you surf really well, then?" Percy looked at Grover, who was trying hard not to laugh. "Geez, Nico," Percy said, exasperated. "I've never really tried." After about 50 more questions of random nonsense, in which Percy was slowly losing his mind and seriously wanted to throw the kid in a sack and throw him to the wolves. However, he didn't and was rewarded with another question. "So, what's the story with that Naruto guy?" "He is awesome," Nico shouted. Percy and Grover laughed nervously. "Well, would you believe us if we tell you he is a ninja?" Nico stared at them blankly before he exploded with enthusiasm. "That is even more awesome," he shouted before going off about what the blonde could do and such. The two boys looked at the younger one in disbelief. "What have we done?" Thankfully, someone came over. However, it was Zoe Nightshade. Percy Jackson. She had dark brown eyes and a slightly upturned her silver circlet in her proud expression. She looked so much like royalty that Percy felt that he had to resist the urge to sit up straight and say, "Yes, ma'am." She studied him distastefully, like he was a bag of dirty laundry she'd been sent to fetch. "Come with me," she said. "Lady Artemis wishes to speak with thee." Zoe led Percy to the last tent, which looked no different from the others, and waved him inside. Bianca D'Angelo was seated next to the auburn-haired girl, who he still had trouble thinking of as Artemis. Then there was Naruto, who was sitting off to the side. Zoe didn't seem very happy that Percy was there, and it showed the same with Naruto as well. Still, Percy wondered how Zoe got Naruto away from Talia. In the center, a golden brazier of fire seemed to burn without fuel or smoke. Behind the goddess, on a polished oak display stand, was her huge silver bow, carved to resemble gazelle horns. The walls were hung with animal pelts, black bear, tiger, and several others they didn't recognize. Percy figured an animal rights activist would have had a heart attack looking at all those rare skins, but maybe since Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, she could replenish whatever she shot. There was a deer with glittering fur and silver horns, its head resting contentedly in Artemis's lap. "Odd. Join us, Percy Jackson," the goddess said. He sat across from her on the tent floor. The goddess studied him, which made him uncomfortable. She had such old eyes for a young girl. "Are you surprised by my age?" she asked. A little. I could appear as a grown woman, or a blazing fire, or anything else I want, but this is what I prefer. This is the average age of my hunters, and all young maidens for whom I am patron, before they go astray." "Go astray?" Percy asked. "Grow up. Become smitten with boys. Become silly, preoccupied, insecure. Forget themselves." Oh. Artemis' attention then shifted to Naruto. "I, along with many others, are put off with your attitude." "Really, are all of Hades' kids that bad?" Naruto asked, a bit annoyed. Artemis looked a little pained at that. "Some are not even given a chance because of their siblings' history. Some are already that bad by the time we meet them. However, after all that we have heard that you have been through, you are the exact opposite of the norm. Also, we also thought you would be worse because you came from the other world." Naruto scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, now that I can see from some of the people I have met. Orochimaru being one of them." "So, you have been there before?" "Yes, but all recruits replied in the negative, saying they had something to prove or wanted to achieve. Your mother being one of my top future recruits." Artemis replied, gauging his reaction. Percy looked at Naruto in worry, wondering what he would feel about that. He was kind of afraid now. Sometimes Naruto had a temper. However, all the tension was brought to a halt when Naruto spoke. "Really? My mom was that badass as a kid?" That made everyone in the group blink. "You are not mad?" Artemis asked, curious as to why. "Why should I be? You can't change what's been done in the past. You got to keep moving forward or you'll regret everything you've done and go insane. Besides, my mom made her choice, so I don't feel I should be mad." Naruto replied. Zoe eyed Naruto with narrowed eyes and could find no deceit. He was telling the truth and it baffled her. "So, you respect women?" "Yep," Naruto replied happily. "Back in my world, our Hokage, the strongest ninja in our village, was the Tsunade of the Sennin. You could say she had Hercules' strength and the bed medic around. Don't mess with you or she mess with your insides, in more ways than one. Then there is Anko, the snake mistress. Kurenai, our genjutsu master. Now she can really mess with your mind." Went off tangent to other women he meet like Ino, Sakura, Tenten, and Tamari. He was truthfully for each one and most would think that was fear, but it was respect for them that he went on about. Finally, there is Hinata. She is part of the Hyuga clan. She may be shy, but I see great things from her. Zoe and Artemis were impressed, but now was not the time to dwell on that. They had other things to do and Artemis feared that there was a possibility that Zoe could fall for the blonde one. Yes, she lost some good hunters to men, but Zoe was among one of her best. Still, all good things come to an end, but she hoped that this lasted longer. Zoe didn't know what to think at the moment. This male had actually gained some of her respect for actually respecting women, but she knew he was with Talia. Still, he was a good person and she liked that. However, Percy had not gained any respect from her, so she settled with glaring at him. But Naruto had caught some of her attention and she felt that she needed to watch him. Artemis had noticed that her hunter, Zoe in particular, still hated men. "You must forgive my hunters if they do not welcome you," Artemis said. "It is very rare that we would have boys in this camp." Boys are usually forbidden to have any contact with the hunters. The last one to see this camp. She looked at Zoe. Which one was it? That boy in Colorado, Zoe said. You turned him into a jackalope. Ah, yes. Artemis nodded, satisfied. I enjoy making jackalopes. At any rate, Percy, I've asked you here so that you might tell me more of the manticore. Bianca has reported some of the, disturbing things the monster said. But she may not have understood them. I'd like to hear them from you. Percy nodded and Naruto kept quiet. He did not want to turn into some rabbit with horns. At least that was what he thought a jackalope was. Why are all women too scary? Well, I guess women could think the same about us, but still. Percy explained his run-in with the manticore and what it had spoke of, making Artemis' fears come true. Artemis put her hand thoughtfully on her silver bow. I feared this was the answer. Zoe sat forward. The scent, my lady? Yes. What scent? Both boys asked, completely lost. Things are stirring that I have not hunted in millennia, Artemis murmured. Prey so old I have nearly forgotten. She stared at Percy intently. We came here tonight sensing the manticore, but he was not the one I seek. Tell me again, exactly what Dr. Thorne said. I hate middle school dances. No. After that, he said somebody called the general was going to explain things to me. Zoe's face paled. She turned to Artemis and started to say something, but Artemis raised her hand. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. Who is this general again? I don't remember, but it had Zoe concerned. Go on, Percy, the goddess said. Well, then Thorne was talking about the great stir pot. Stirring, Bianca corrected. Yeah, and he said, soon we shall have the most important monster of all, the one that shall bring about the downfall of Olympus. The goddess was so still she could have been a statue. Naruto groaned. Great, I read something about that back at Yancy. This'll be fun, he said, confusing Percy. However, Percy didn't really know how important it was, so he shrugged it off. Maybe he was lying, he said. Artemis shook her head. No, he was not. I've been too slow to see the signs. I must hunt this monster. Zoe looked like she was trying very hard not to be afraid, but she nodded. We will leave right away, my lady. No, Zoe. I must do this alone. But, Artemis, this task is too dangerous even for the hunters. You know where I must start my search. You cannot go there with me. As you wish, my lady. I will find this creature, Artemis vowed. And I shall bring it back to Olympus by winter solstice. It will be all the proof I need to convince the council of the gods of how much danger we are in. You know what the monster is? I asked. Artemis gripped her bow. Let us pray I am wrong. Can goddesses pray? Percy asked, wondering about that absent-mindedly, making Naruto chuckle. A flicker of a smile played across Artemis's lips. Before I go, Percy Jackson, Naruto Uzumaki, I have a small task for you too. Does it involve getting turned into a jackalope? Sadly, no. I want you to escort the hunters back to Camp Half-Blood. They can stay there in safety until I return. What? Zoe blurted out. But, Artemis, we hate that place. The last time we stayed there. Yes, I know, Artemis said. But I'm sure Dionysus will not hold a grudge just because of a little, misunderstanding. It's your right to use Cabin 8 whenever you are in need. Besides, I hear they rebuilt the cabins you burned down. Zoe muttered something about foolish campers. I don't have a problem with that. Naruto replied with a shrug. Having more people in camp would be fun. So you girls burned down a cabin. I practically tortured Tantalus when he was there. Pranks are always fun. Zoe and Artemis bristled when they heard that man's name, however, they were glad Naruto made his life a living hell after what he did. He is not still there, is he? Zoe asked. No. He is long gone and is being tortured by my mom. Naruto nonchalantly, making Artemis smile when he mentioned Kushina. And now there is one last decision to make. Artemis turned to Bianca. Have you made up your mind, my girl? Bianca hesitated. I'm still thinking about it. Wait, Percy said. Thinking about what? They've invited me to join the hunt. What? But you can't. You have to come to Camp Half-Blood so Chiron can train you. It's the only way you can learn to survive. Percy nearly shouted. It is not the only way for a girl, Zoe said. Percy couldn't believe what he was heeding and was even more enraged when he saw that Naruto wasn't saying anything. Bianca, camp is cool. It's got a Pegasus stable and a sword-fighting arena and, I mean, what do you get by joining the hunters? To begin with, Zoe said, immortality. Percy turned his to Artemis in shock. She's kidding, right? Zoe rarely kids about anything, Artemis said. My hunters follow me on my adventures. They are my maidservants, my companions, my sisters in arms. Once they swear loyalty to me, they are indeed immortal. Unless they fall in battle, which is unlikely. Or break their oath. What oath? Percy asked. Love. They won't be able to fall in love with men, I mean. They are not allowed. Naruto replied, breaking his silence to answer his friend. It is a choice because of this and their immortality, they never grow up, never get married. To be a maiden eternally. He then paused. Think of it like the girl version of the Lost Boys in those Peter Pan movies. Percy seemed to think of that before he looked back to Artemis. So they will be like you? Like you? The goddess nodded. Percy tried picturing it, he couldn't. So you just go around the country recruiting half-bloods. Not just half-bloods, Zoe interrupted. Lady Artemis does not discriminate by birth. All who honor the goddess may join. Half-bloods, nymphs, mortals. Which are you, then? Percy dumbly asked and she glared at him. Percy, not all questions are that great to ask. Naruto stated, trying to pull his friend's ass out of the fire. Just like with asking an older lady's age. Percy widened his eyes at that and nodded. Zoe, still glaring at Percy, nodded at Naruto slightly. That is not thy concern, boy. The point is Bianca may join if she wishes. It is her choice, Zoe stated. Bianca, this is crazy, Percy said. What about your brother? Nico can't be a hunter. Certainly not, Artemis agreed. He will go to camp. Unfortunately, that's the best boys can do. Hey, Percy protested, however Naruto rolled his eyes, not bothering to argue. It wouldn't do him any good this time around anyway. You can see him from time to time, Artemis assured Bianca. But you will be free of responsibility. He will have the camp counselors to take care of him. And you will have a new family. Us. A new family, Bianca repeated dreamily. Free of responsibility. Percy, I know you don't like this choice, but it is not yours to make. Naruto stated. I knew what this was about Percy. I remember some of our reading back in Yansei. So, we can't influence her. After all, it is her choice in the end. Bianca looked at Zoe. Is it worth it? Zoe nodded. It is. What do I have to do? Say this. Zoe told her, I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. And then, I turn my back on the company of men, accept eternal maidenhood, and join the hunt. Bianca looked to be in deep thought, wondering whether or not she should do this or not. If she was honest with herself, she wanted this. She wanted to be free of taking care of her little brother all the time. She wanted to be free. But, with the arrival of Naruto, her brother, her older brother, she could actually say that now, she was not sure she wanted that. He could help her take care of Nico, but she would not act all dependent on him. There was also the oddness of it all. Their father, while having people take care of them, didn't want to reveal them to other people as he kids. Some old pact of not having any more kids. However, all three of them were technicality. They were all conceived before the pact. Naruto was something to her and while not revealing it outright, he promised to take care of them like an older brother should. And the thing is, she believed him. She could actually see them as a family and if what Artemis said was true about the children of Hades, Naruto could be the one to keep them out of the darkness. With her mind made up, he looked straight at Artemis and said, I am sorry, but there are things that I am needed for and family is important to me. No matter if I would lay some freedom for my brother. I feel that I would regret it later if I said yes to your answer. Artemis looked at the girl for a moment and nodded. She knew how she felt, having a brother of her own. She also knew that Hades was their father, effectively making her Naruto's younger sister. Now if she knew that, she was good at keeping that hidden for now. I can understand that. It is your choice after all. That choice didn't sit well with Zoe, but she accepted it. At least it was not the Thalia rejection. Still she wondered if Naruto had a hand in this at all. Artemis closed her eyes. Dawn is approaching. Zoe, break camp. You must get to Long Island quickly and safely. I shall summon a ride from my brother. Zoe didn't look real happy about this idea, but she nodded and left the tent. Bianca turned to her secret brother and said, I hope I will not be too much of a burden at camp. Naruto smiled. I doubt you will, but don't worry, we got your back, right Percy? Yeah, I am also glad you chose to stay with us. Percy said. Bianca just shrugged. Yes, now you all get to see my irresponsible twin, Apollo. Artemis replied with a gleam in her eyes. I do wonder what he is like. Naruto replied airheadedly, making Percy wonder how his friend was so knowledgeable about things and then dumb about others. Oh well, Naruto was Naruto after all. Artemis assured the group that dawn was coming, but it was just hard to tell. It was colder and darker and snowier than ever. Up on the hill, Westover Hall's windows were completely lightless. Percy wondered if the teachers had even noticed the D'Angelos and Dr. Thorne were missing yet. He didn't want to be around when they did. The hunters broke camp as quickly as they'd set it up. Percy stood shivering in the snow, unlike the hunters, who didn't seem to feel at all uncomfortable, and Artemis stared into the east like she was expecting something. Bianca sat off to one side, talking with Nico. The boy looked wide-eyed before hugging his sister forcefully before he looked towards Naruto with a smile. That was another thing, Percy just could not understand the situation there, but he felt that it was not his time to know just yet. He just wished that he knew what was up. Oh, and the guy didn't look cold at all with his biker wear on. It was just nuts. Then there was the small dog that was playing with hunters. That little dog was on Naruto's bike. Naruto noticed him looking at him, so he walked over along with Taliah and Grover, the former of which was leaning on the blonde ninja. Those two wanted to know what happened in the tent, so Percy told them. Grover paled before looking to the girl with her brother in shock. Taliah looked as well before saying, "What did you say to make her refuse, Naruto? What makes you think I said anything?" Naruto asked with a smile, making the girl roll her eyes. "Don't play dumb with me," Taliah said with a devious smirk. She knew he had said something to the girl to make her stay with her brother, she just didn't know what. Still, the last time the hunters visited camp, it didn't go well. How'd they even show up here, Percy wondered. I mean, they just appeared out of nowhere. And Bianca didn't join them, Taliah said with a smirk. Looks like Zoe didn't get her claws into another one. Still, Grover said, eternity with Artemis? He heaved a big sigh. Taliah rolled her eyes. You satyrs, you're all in love with Artemis. Don't you get that she'll never love you back? But she's so into nature, Grover swooned. You're nuts, said Taliah. Nuts and berries, Grover said dreamily. Yeah, Naruto laughed at that. Man Grover, I don't know if you would survive in my world or not. Nothing but trees and nature, although the trade-off is all the dead because we are ninjas. Grover looked nervous. I am not sure I want to go there. Finally the sky began to lighten. Artemis muttered, about time. He's so lazy during the winter. You're, waiting for sunrise? Percy asked. For my brother. Yes. Artemis replied, a little irritated. I wonder if we'll get along. Naruto wondered aloud while Percy still could not believe that Apollo could drive the sun. Artemis seemed to pick on Percy's skepticism and ignoring Naruto for the moment. It's not exactly as you think, Artemis said. Oh, okay. Percy started to relax. So, it's not like he'll be pulling up in a... There was a sudden burst of light on the horizon. A blast of warmth. Don't look, Artemis advised. Not until he parks. Oh, that should be interesting. Naruto thought as they did as they were told. The light and warmth intensified until Percy's winter coat felt like it was melting off of him. Hell, Naruto was pretty sure his leather coat was melting to him. Then suddenly the light died. Percy looked first while hearing Naruto whistled. He couldn't believe it. It was the car he wanted, anyway. A red convertible Maserati Spider. It was so awesome it glowed. Then he realized it was glowing because the metal was hot. The snow had melted around the Maserati in a perfect circle, which explained why they were now standing on green grass and their shoes were wet. The driver got out, smiling. He looked about 17 or 18, and for a second, Percy looked uneasy because he almost thought it was Luke, his old enemy. Thankfully, Naruto put his hand on the boy's shoulder to calm him. Percy took a better look. This guy had the same sandy hair and outdoorsy good looks. But it wasn't Luke. This guy was taller, with no scar on his face like Luke's. His smile was brighter and more playful. Luke didn't do much more than scowl and sneer these days. The Maserati driver wore jeans and loafers and a sleeveless t-shirt. Wow, Taliah muttered. Apollo is hot. Well, he is the sun god. Naruto deadpanned. Taliah smirked, seeing that Naruto was a little jealous, but she would never leave him for some pretty boy god that would dump her for the next piece of ass that walked his way. No, she was in love with Naruto, but that does not mean she liked messing with him sometimes. No, that's not it. She replied. Naruto, seeing what she was doing, just rolled his eyes. Little sister. Apollo called. If his teeth were any whiter he could have blinded them without the sun car. But Naruto idly wonder if he was the one to teach guy from his world that technique. What's up? You never call. You never write. I was getting worried. Artemis sighed. I'm fine, Apollo. And I am not your little sister. Hey, I was born first. We're twins. How many millennia do we have to argue? So what's up? He interrupted. Got the girls with you, I see. You all need some tips on archery? Artemis grit her teeth. I need a favor. I have some hunting to do, alone. I need you to take my companions to Camp Half-Blood. Sure, sis. Then he raised his hands in a stop everything gesture. I feel a haiku coming on. The hunters all groaned. Apparently they'd met Apollo before. He cleared his throat and held up one hand dramatically. Green grass breaks through snow. Artemis pleads for my help. I am so cool. He grinned at them, waiting for applause. That last line was only 4 syllables, Artemis said. Apollo frowned. Was it? Yes. What about I am so big-headed? No, that's 6 syllables. He started muttering to himself. Zoe Nightshade turned to the group of demigods, and a satyr. Lord Apollo has been going through this haiku phase ever since he visited Japan. 'Tis not as bad as the time he visited Limerick. If I'd had to hear one more poem that started with, there once was a goddess from Sparta. I've got it, Apollo announced. I am so awesome. That's 5 syllables. He bowed, looking very pleased with himself. Not really creative, but it works. Naruto thought. And now, sis. Transportation for the hunters, you say? Good timing. I was just about ready to roll. These demigods will also need a ride, Artemis said, pointing to Naruto's group. Some of Chiron's campers. No problem. Apollo checked us out. Let's see, Talia, right? I've heard all about you. Talia blushed. Hi, Lord Apollo. Zeus's girl, yes? Makes you my half-sister. Used to be a tree, didn't you? Glad you're back. I hate it when pretty girls turn into trees. Man, I remember one time. I think we should go soon. Naruto deadpanned. Apollo looked at Naruto before a giant smile came on his face. So, the ninja boy is here. You know, I have agreed with most on Olympus that you are okay. Also, I have been to your world before. Really? What did you do? Naruto asked. I met this one guy called Killer Bee. Taught me about rap. Apollo said, making Naruto smirk. He kind of liked rap. However, the guy was a little off. So wanna do a rap battle? Hell, it might be my new thing. Well, I am not great at it, but I can try my hand at it. Naruto said with smirk. But we don't have time for that. Artemis stated hastily, hoping to avoid something catastrophic. You should get going. Oh, right. Then he looked at the water boy, and his eyes narrowed. Percy Jackson? Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. It seemed weird calling a teenager, sir, but he'd learned to be careful with immortals. They tended to get offended easily. Then they blew stuff up. Apollo studied him, but he didn't say anything, which Percy found a little creepy. Well, he said at last. We'd better load up, huh? Ride only goes one way, west. And if you miss it, you miss it. Percy looked at the Maserati, which would seat 2 people max. There were about 20 of them. Cool car, Nico said. Thanks, kid, Apollo said. But how will we all fit? Oh, Apollo seemed to notice the problem for the first time. Well, yeah, I hate to change out of sports car mode, but I suppose. He took out his car keys and beeped the security alarm button. Chirp, chirp. For a moment, the car glowed brightly. The glare died. The Maserati had been replaced by one of those turtle-top shuttle buses like we used for school basketball games. Right, he said. Everybody in. Zoe ordered the hunters to start loading. She picked up her camping pack, and Apollo said, Here, sweetheart. Let me get that. Zoe recoiled. Her eyes flashed murderously. Brother, Artemis chided. You do not help my hunters. You do not look at, talk to, or flirt with my hunters. And you do not call them sweetheart. Apollo spread his hands. Sorry, I forgot. Hey, sis, where are you off to, anyway? Hunting, Artemis said. It's none of your business. I'll find out. I see all. Know all. Apollo said before he looked to Naruto and winked, telling he knew about Naruto's little harem, which made the blonde chuckle. Artemis snorted. Just drop them off, Apollo. And no messing around. No, I never mess around. Artemis rolled her eyes, then looked at us. I will see you by winter solstice. Zoe, you are in charge of the hunters. Do well. Do as I would do. Zoe straightened. Yes, my lady. Artemis knelt and touched the ground as if looking for she rose. She looked troubled. So much danger. The beast must be found. She sprinted toward the woods and melted into the snow and shadows. Talia then chose that moment to speak to Naruto. Hey, are you coming with us? What about your bike? Right, my bike. Naruto scratched his head before a smile broke out and he snapped his fingers and the bike glowed brightly before it jumped into his hand, turning into a snow globe. See? Travel size. Talia laughed before a pout came to her face. But I wanted to have some alone time before we got to camp and Clarice and Selena notice you're there. Zoe rose an eyebrow at that, but shook it off. She didn't know if she wanted to know. Oh, you want some alone time? Naruto asked with a smirk. I can think of a few ways for that to happen. Nico rolled his eyes and made a gagging noise. Gross. Quit being all lovey-dovey. Bianca smiled before she rapped the kid on the head. Apollo just chuckled and asked, so, who wants to drive? The hunters piled into the van. They all crammed into the back so they'd be as far away as possible from Apollo and the rest of the highly infectious males. As Percy put it with a smile and Naruto just laughed at that. However, since Bianca didn't join the hunters, she still wanted to be friends, so she sat next to Zoe to try and make conversation. This is so cool, Nico said, jumping up and down in the driver's seat. Is this really the sun? I thought Helios and Selene were the sun and moon gods. How come sometimes it's them and sometimes it's you and Artemis? Downsizing, Apollo said. The Romans started it. They couldn't afford all those temple sacrifices, so they laid off Helios and Selene and folded their duties into our job descriptions. My sis got the moon. I got the sun. It was pretty annoying at first, but at least I got this cool car. But how does it work? Nico asked. I thought the sun was a big fiery ball of gas. Apollo chuckled and ruffled Nico's hair. That rumor probably got started because Artemis used to call me a big fiery ball of gas. Seriously, kid, it depends on whether you're talking astronomy or philosophy. You want to talk astronomy? Bah, what fun is that? You want to talk about how humans think about the sun? Ah, now that's more interesting. They've got a lot riding on the sun, so to speak. It keeps them warm, grows their crops, powers engines, makes everything look, well, sunnier. This chariot is built out of human dreams about the sun, kid. It's as old as Western civilization. Every day, it drives across the sky from east to west, lighting up all those puny little mortal lives. The chariot is a manifestation of the sun's power, the way mortals perceive it. Make sense? Nico shook his head. No. Well then, just think of it as a really powerful, really dangerous solar car. Can I drive? No. Too young. Ooh. Grover raised his hand. No, Apollo said. Too furry. He looked past Percy and focused on Talia and Naruto. Oh, Talia, daughter of Zeus. Lord of the sky. Perfect. While she is driving, me and Naruto can do our best at a rap battle. Everyone in bus looked at the sun god like he had gone insane. However, all Talia didn't care about the rapping. She didn't think she could or should drive. Oh, no. Talia shook her head. No, thanks. Come on, Apollo said. How old are you? Talia hesitated. I don't know. It was sad, but true. She'd been turned into a tree when she was 12, but that had been 7 years ago. So she should be 19, if you went by years. But she still felt like she was 12, and if you looked at her, she seemed somewhere in between. The best Chiron could figure, she had kept aging while in tree form, but much more slowly. Apollo tapped his finger to his lips. You're 15, almost 16. How do you know that? Hey, I'm the god of prophecy. I know stuff. You'll turn 16 in about a week. That's my birthday. December 22nd, which means you're old enough now to drive with a learner's permit. Talia shifted her feet nervously. Talia, I think you can do it. Naruto said with a smile as he put an arm around the girl. And since when do you back down from a challenge like this? Talia looked to her boyfriend who had the utmost confidence in her and smiled. Zoe, who had been watching this, rose an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. She didn't know how to make this relationship. Talia nodded. I'll do it. Apollo smiled brightly again at that. Naruto really knew how to push buttons to make things work. Don't sweat it, Maine to Long Island is a really short trip, and don't worry about what happened to the last kid I trained. You're Zeus's daughter. He's not going to blast you out of the sky. Apollo laughed good-naturedly. The rest of group didn't join him. He hit a button on the dashboard, and a sign popped up along the top of the windshield. They looked and saw that while backwards it read, "Warning, student driver. Take it away." Apollo told Talia, "You're gonna be a natural." "You know, I am pretty excited about this," Naruto said with a big smile, but he did notice Percy's look of jealousy. He needed to learn that not everything was going to go his way. For a while, Apollo advised Talia on her first-time driving skills. After a while, he had Naruto create a clone while he and the original began their rap battle. Apollo looked nervous for a second and asked, "Hey, I am really rusty with my rap skills, so how about you just rap?" Naruto smirked, thinking that Apollo was just scared he would lose, but nodded nonetheless. "Drop me with a beat." The sun god smiled as he hit another button and the speak started booming music, and Naruto swore he heard some of it before. He shrugged and sang his song. "Go ramen, go ramen, go ramen. Fingers off my senpai or you'll mess with the keke genkai. Mess with me and I'll have cook you with something called fuck off no jutsu." Percy and Grover looked at each other before they cracked up. That sounded something that Naruto would do. Talia smirked to herself despite her still freaking out about driving. Apollo laughed thinking that Naruto was way better than him, that was for sure. The hunters just continued to glare at the blonde, but some of them did tap their feet because the beat was catchy. "Feel just like I won the lotto, respect to Masashi Kishimoto. Trust me, this is all day. Just holla what's up at the cosplay. Look inside and you won't find me thanks to 100 million Cage Bunchin. Still all these monsters try and harm him. One for the raw ramen. Orochimaru came at me and still could not defeat me. If you think he can beat my old friend Sakura, then I'll put on my forehead protecta." The music stopped after that because he stopped. "Yeah, that's all I got. Still, a lot more than I could have rapped." Apollo replied with a bright smile as he slapped Naruto's back. "Well, that's great and all, but I am freaking out here." Talia growled. "We need to veer south for Long Island," Apollo said. "Hang a left." Talia jerked the wheel. "The other left," Apollo suggested. Percy looked outside and saw that they were high in the air. That made him a little sick. "Ah," Apollo said, "a little lower, sweetheart. Cape Cod is freezing over." Talia tilted the wheel. Her face was chalk white, her forehead beaded with sweat. Something was definitely wrong. Naruto had replaced his clone and was trying to keep the girl calm, but that was easier said than done. The bus pitched down and somebody screamed. Maybe it was me. Now we were heading straight toward the Atlantic Ocean at 1,000 miles an hour, the New England coastline off to our right. And it was getting hot in the bus. Apollo had been thrown somewhere in the back of the bus, but he started climbing up the rows of seats. "Take the wheel," Grover begged him. "No worries," Apollo said. He looked plenty worried. "She just has to learn to." Whoa. Down below them was a little snow-covered New England town. At least, it used to be snow-covered. Percy and Naruto could not believe their eyes as they watched the snow melted off the trees and the roofs and the lawns. The white steeple on a church turned brown and started to smolder. Little plumes of smoke, like birthday candles, were popping up all over the town. Trees and rooftops were catching fire. "Pull up," Percy freaked. There was a wild light in Talia's eyes. She yanked back on the wheel. Percy and Grover had to hold on to their seats for dear life while Naruto just stood in place thanks to his chakra while a giant smiled the whole time. "There," Apollo pointed. "Long Island, dead ahead. Let's slow down, dear." Dead is only an expression. Talia was thundering toward the coastline of northern Long Island. There was Camp Half-Blood. The valley, the woods, the beach. Hell, Naruto could see the dining pavilion and cabins and the amphitheater. "I'm under control," Talia muttered. "I'm under control." They were only a few hundred yards away now. "Brake," Apollo said. "I can do this." "Brake." Talia slammed her foot on the brake, and the sun bus pitched forward at a 45-degree angle, slamming into the Camp Half-Blood canoe lake with a huge floosh. Steam billowed up, sending several frightened naiads scrambling out of the water with half-woven wicker baskets. The bus bobbed to the surface, along with a couple of capsized, half-melted canoes. "Well," said Apollo with a brave smile. "You were right, my dear. You had everything under control. Let's go see if we boiled anyone important, shall we?" "Oh yeah, like I said, you could do it," Naruto said with a big smile as he helped his girlfriend up out of the seat. Just don't make me do that ever again. Talia said quietly, not making any promises. Naruto joked, getting a dirty look from the girl. Still, it makes me wonder how the mortals would perceive the torched landscape. I thought you said I did good. Talia freaked. You did. Naruto smiled. We're alive, aren't we? It was weird walking into camp. Why? Well, it had been a few months since he was there because of his training in the underworld. Plus, it was winter and there was actual snow on the ground. Now that was surprising. See, the camp had the ultimate magic climate control. Nothing gets inside the borders unless the director, Mr. D, wants it to. Naruto thought it would be warm and sunny, but instead the snow had been allowed to fall lightly. Frost covered the chariot track and the strawberry fields. The cabins were decorated with tiny flickering lights, like Christmas lights, except they seemed to be balls of real fire. More lights glowed in the woods, and weirdest of all, a fire flickered in the attic window of the big house, where the oracle dwelt, imprisoned in an old mummified body. He honestly didn't want to even think what that thing was doing up there. It freaked the hell out of him, and he was in the underworld for a few months. Whoa, Nico said as he climbed off the bus. Is that a climbing wall? Yeah, Percy said. Why is there lava pouring down it? Little extra challenge. Come on, I'll introduce you to Chiron. Naruto stated with smirk. He looked over to Zoe and said, I can assume you've been here before and met Chiron? She nodded stiffly. I have. Tell him we will be in cabin 8. Hunters, follow me. Well, Naruto started to say, only to be interrupted by Grover. I'll show you the way, Grover offered. We know the way. Oh, really, it's no trouble. It's easy to get lost here, if you don't. He tripped over a canoe and came up still talking. Like my old daddy goat used to say. Come on. Zoe rolled her eyes while Naruto shrugged with look saying, can you please just humor him? She didn't know why, but just nodded and let the satyr lead her and the other hunters. The hunters shouldered their packs and their bows and headed off toward the cabins. Bianca smiled at Zoe as they left and Zoe actually smiled back. Naruto wondered what Talia had said to make them hate each other. Bianca seemed okay with Zoe after all. It was a mystery to him. Oh well, he's going to drive them up the wall, isn't he? Naruto said with a wide smile, feeling a little sorry for the hunters. Oh yeah, Talia replied with a sly smirk. Any satyr would try and get on Artemis' good side and Grover is no different. She then looked at Naruto and smiled knowingly. What, you know? Talia said, but after seeing the boy's clueless look, she decided to elaborate. I saw how Zoe looked at you. You actually caught the ultimate Ice Queen's interest. Naruto's eyes went to dinner plate sizes. Now that was worth it. But just so you know, it will take more than being respectful to get her, but when you do, I can finally say I told you so to her. The blonde put a deadpanned look on his face. Okay, I am not even sure I want to know anymore. Before she could ask anything, Apollo's voice rang out. Take care, sweethearts, he said, before winking at Percy. Watch out for those prophecies, Percy. I'll see you soon. What do you mean? Percy asked. Instead of answering, he hopped back in the bus. Later Naruto and Talia, be good. He shouted with a knowing wink at them, making them blush. He gave them a wicked smile, as if he knew something they didn't. Then he closed the doors and revved the engine. They all had to turn aside as the sun chariot took off in a blast of heat. When they looked back, the lake was steaming. A red Maserati soared over the woods, glowing brighter and climbing higher until it disappeared in a ray of sunlight. Well, that was interesting. Bianca stated, still perplexed about all this. Hey, who Chiron? Nico interrupted. I don't have his figurine. Our activities director, Percy said. Well, you'll see. If those hunter girls don't like him. Nico grumbled but stopped when he saw his sister smile at him. Oh well, not everyone is likable to them I guess. No, but don't worry about that. Naruto said with a smile as he walked up to the kid and put a hand on his shoulder and he led them all into camp. Nico didn't know why, but he really liked Naruto. There another thing that threw Naruto and judging by Percy's expression, him too. There was barely anyone in camp during winter. Just the year-rounders were there. The ones who didn't have homes to go to, or would get attacked by monsters too much if they left. But there didn't even seem to be many of them, either. Charles Beckendorf from the Hephaestus cabin stoking the forge outside the camp armory. The Stoll brothers, Travis and Connor, from the Hermes cabin, were picking the lock on the camp store. A few kids from the Ares cabin were having a snowball fight with the wood nymphs at the edge of the forest. Naruto noticed that Clarice wasn't around, so that Minachi had gone home. Not surprising to him, she could take care of herself in any tough situation. However, he noticed that Percy was just fine with that. Those two still didn't get along. However, Naruto did notice that Selena was there and she smiled him as they passed. Yeah, he would be seeing her soon. The big house was decorated with strings of red and yellow fireballs that warmed the porch but didn't seem to catch anything on fire. Inside, flames crackled in the hearth. The air smelled like hot chocolate. Mr. D, the camp director, and Chiron were playing a quiet game of cards in the parlor. Chiron's brown beard was shaggier for the winter. His curly hair had grown a little longer. He wasn't posing as a teacher this year, so that meant he could afford to be casual. He wore a fuzzy sweater with a hoof print design on it, and he had a blanket on his lap that almost hid his wheelchair completely. He smiled when he saw us. Percy, Talia, Naruto. Ah, and these two must be Nico and Bianca D'Angelo. Naruto replied with a knowing smile, something Chiron picked up on and nodded slightly to himself. Chiron breathed a sigh of relief. Percy's team succeeded, then. Well, Percy said nervously while Naruto looked sad. Chiron's smile melted. What's wrong? And where is Annabeth? Oh, dear, Mr. D said in a bored voice, not another one lost. Naruto glared at Mr. D at that point. The wine god was wearing a neon orange leopard skin warm-up suit and his purple running shoes. A golden laurel wreath was tilted sideways on his curly black hair, which must have meant he'd won the last hand of cards. What do you mean? Talia asked. Who else is lost? Just then, Grover trotted into the room, grinning like crazy. He had a black eye and red lines on his face that looked like a slap mark. The hunters are all moved in. Naruto snorted when he looked at the satyr. He looked like he had too much fun, even though he got his ass kicked. Chiron frowned. The hunters, eh? I see we have much to talk about. He glanced at Nico and Bianca. Grover, perhaps you should take our young friends to the den and show them our orientation film. But, oh, right. Yes, sir. Orientation film? Nico asked. Is it G or PG? Yeah, I don't usually let him see anything higher than that. Bianca stated seriously. She had to keep the kid in line somehow. She eyed Naruto a bit and wondered how he would handle that. It's PG-13, Grover said. Cool. Nico happily followed him out of the room. Bianca rolled her eyes as she smiled at Naruto as they left. Now, Chiron said to the demigods of the Big Three, perhaps you three should sit down and tell us the whole story. When the story was done, Chiron turned to Mr. D. We should launch a search for Annabeth immediately. I'll go, the three demigods said at the same time. Mr. D sniffed. Certainly not. The three started complaining, but Mr. D held up his hand. He had that purplish angry fire in his eyes that usually meant something bad and godly was going to happen if they didn't shut up. From what you have told me, Mr. D said, we have broken even on this escapade. We have, regrettably lost Annie Bell. Annabeth, Percy snapped. She'd gone to camp since she was 7, and still Mr. D pretended not to know her name. That was so irritating to him. Yes, he said. And you procured a small annoying boy and his overprotective sister to replace her. So I see no point risking further half-bloods on a ridiculous rescue. The possibility is very great that this Annie girl is dead. Percy wanted to strangle Mr. D. It wasn't fair Zeus had sent him here to dry out as camp director for 100 years. It was meant to be a punishment for Mr. D's bad behavior on Olympus, but it ended up being a punishment for all of the campers. Annabeth may be alive, Chiron said, but Percy could tell he was having trouble sounding upbeat. He'd practically raised Annabeth all those years she was a year-round camper, before she'd given living with her dad and stepmom a second try. She's very bright. If our enemies have her, she will try to play for time. She may even pretend to cooperate. That's right, Talia said. Luke would want her alive. Right, and that is why as her friend, I can't leave her to whatever fate he has for her. Naruto said seriously. In which case, said Mr. D, I'm afraid she will have to be smart enough to escape on her own. Naruto growled at that, getting as irritated as Percy was now. However, Percy just got up and left the table. Percy. Chiron's tone was full of warning. In the back of his mind, he he knew Mr. D was not somebody to mess with. Even if you were an impulsive ADHD kid like him, he wouldn't give you any slack. But Percy was so angry he didn't care. "You're glad to lose another camper," Percy said. "You'd like it if we all disappeared." Mr. D stifled a yawn. "You have a point?" "Yeah," Percy growled. Naruto stood off to the side, staying quiet, not sure what to say. Talia seemed to be in the same situation. Just because you were sent here as a punishment doesn't mean you have to be a lazy jerk. This is your civilization, too. Maybe you could try helping out a little. For a second, there was no sound except the crackle of the fire. The light reflected in Mr. D's eyes, giving him a sinister look. He opened his mouth to say something, probably a curse that would blast the kid to smithereens, when Nico burst into the room, followed by Grover and Bianca. "So cool," Nico yelled, holding his hands out to Chiron. You're a centaur. I am not sure how to take that, but I am getting used to all this weirdness." Bianca replied as she walked. Chiron managed a nervous smile. "Yes, Mr. D'Angelo, if you please. Though, I prefer to stay in human form in this wheelchair for, first encounters." "Thank you," Bianca said, getting a smile from the man. And, whoa, Nico looked at Mr. D. "You're the wine dude? No way." Mr. D turned his eyes away from Percy and gave Nico a look of loathing. "The wine dude? Dionysus, right? Oh, wow, I've got your figurine." "My figurine," Bianca grimaced. "It is part of a game based on the so-called mythology." "Mythomagic," Nico boosted. "And a holofoil card, too. And even though you've only got like 500 attack points and everybody thinks you're the lamest god card, I totally think your powers are sweet." "Oh, Mr. D seemed truly perplexed, which probably saved Percy's life. "Well, that's gratifying." "Percy," Chiron said quickly, "you, Naruto and Talia go down to the cabins. Inform the campers we'll be playing Capture the Flag tomorrow evening." "Capture the flag?" Percy asked. "But we don't have enough." "It is a tradition," Chiron said. "A friendly match whenever the hunters visit." "Yeah," Talia muttered. "I bet it's real friendly. Why do I feel like this is going to end in disaster?" Naruto deadpanned. Chiron jerked his head toward Mr. D, who was still frowning as Nico talked about how many defense points all the gods had in his game while Bianca looked on nervously. "Run along now," Chiron told us. "Oh, right," Talia said. "Come on boys." She hauled the two out of the big house before Dionysus could remember that he wanted to kill one of them. "You've already got Ares on your bad side," Talia reminded Percy as the three of them trudged toward the cabins. "You need another immortal enemy?" She was right. Percy's first summer as a camper, he and Naruto had gotten in a fight with Ares, and now Percy and all his children wanted to kill him, which was strange because Naruto got the opposite treatment. It just didn't make much sense to the water boy. Hell, he really didn't need Dionysus as a real enemy. He wasn't sure Naruto could protect him from that. "Sorry," Percy said, "I couldn't help it. It's just so unfair." She stopped by the armory and looked out across the valley, toward the top of Half-Blood Hill. Her pine tree was still there, the golden fleece glittering in its lowest branch. The tree's magic still protected the borders of camp, but it no longer used Talia's spirit for power. "Percy, everything is unfair," Talia muttered. "Sometimes I wish." She didn't finish, but her tone was so sad Percy felt sorry for her. With her ragged black hair and her black punk clothes, an old wool overcoat wrapped around her, she looked like some kind of huge raven, completely out of place in the white landscape. Naruto was no different with his biker clothes. That was actually kind of funny. They were perfect for each other in his eyes. Naruto put a hand on the girl's shoulder, a knowing smile on his face. Talia smiled as well and hugged the blonde. They both wanted to put all the crap they went through behind them. How Naruto stayed sane with what he went through, Talia would never know, and it will driving her insane. He seriously was not like other children of Hades. "We'll get Annabeth back," Percy promised. "I just don't know how yet. First I found out that Luke is lost," she said. "Now Annabeth. Don't think like that," Percy stated with a frown. "You're right." She straightened up. "We'll find a way. Of course we will. We always do after all." Naruto replied with a laugh. "There is always a way." Talia and Percy nodded at that. They were demigods and some of the strongest in a long time. Yeah, they would do their best. Over at the basketball court, a few of the hunters were shooting hoops. One of them was arguing with a guy from the Ares cabin. The Aries kid had his hand on his sword and the hunter girl looked like she was going to exchange her basketball for a bow and arrow any second. "Oh no," Naruto deadpanned. "Me and Naruto will break that up," Taliah said. "You circulate around the cabins. Tell everybody about capture the flag tomorrow." "Wait, why me?" Naruto asked, completely caught off guard. "All right, you should be team captain," Percy offered, ignoring the biker blonde. "No, no," she said. "You and Naruto have been at camp longer. One of you do it." Percy took on a thoughtful look on his face and then said, "Naruto then." Don't I have a choice in this?" Naruto asked. "Not really," Taliah replied with a smirk. "How about we all be captain, co-captain it?" Naruto offered, trying to get out of doing on his own. Taliah nodded, though the thought of her leading made her a bit uneasy. Percy seemed to be in the same boat, but he nodded as well. Percy then turned back to Taliah and said, "Hey, Taliah. Yeah? I'm sorry about what happened at Westover. I should have waited for you guys." "'Sokay, Percy. I probably would have done the same thing." She shifted from foot to foot, like she was trying to decide whether or not to say more. "You know, you asked about my mom and I kinda snapped at you. It's just, I went back to find her after 7 years, and I found out she died in Los Angeles. She was a heavy drinker, and apparently she was out driving late one night about 2 years ago, and..." Taliah blinked hard while gripping Naruto's hand for a moment. He seemed to already know. Actually he did. To test out his bike before he went to the underworld, he took Taliah for a ride. The end was not a great experience for Taliah when she found out about her mom. "I'm sorry," Percy said. "Yeah, well, it's not like we were ever close. I ran away when I was 10. Best 2 years of my life were when I was running around with Luke and Annabeth. But still, that's why you had trouble with the Sunvan." She gave him a wary look. "What do you mean? The way you stiffened up? You must have been thinking about your mom, not wanting to get behind the wheel, even if Naruto was giving you his support." Percy replied. Naruto grimaced about that comment and Percy wished he never said that because the look she was giving him made him nervous and fearful for his life. Why? Well, she was giving the water boy the same look Zeus. The same look when he was angry, like her eyes would shoot 1,000,000 volts. Naruto got a random thought at that. Could she have a power like that? "Yeah," she muttered. "Yeah, that must have been it." She trudged off toward the court while dragging Naruto with her, where the Aries camper and the hunter were trying to kill each other with a sword and a basketball. However, she wanted to cool off her own way, so she sent Naruto with Percy in the end. "I messed up, didn't I?" Percy grimaced as they walked around the cabins. The cabins were the weirdest collection of buildings you've ever seen. Zeus and Hera's big white columned buildings, cabins 1 and 2, stood in the middle, with 5 gods' cabins on the left and 5 goddesses' cabins on the right, so they all made a U around the central green and the barbecue hearth. Then the really out-of-the-place cabin was Hades. It looked like one of those haunted houses and Naruto was supposed to live in that. Charming. Yeah, but don't worry about it for now. She just needs to cool off. Naruto replied nonchalantly. "What happened anyway?" Percy asked. "Sorry Percy, but I am not telling you that, you'll have to ask her yourself." Naruto stated seriously and Percy got the hint to leave it alone for the moment. They made the rounds, telling everybody about capture the flag. Percy woke up some Aries kid from his midday nap and he yelled at poor kid to go away. When Percy asked him where Clarice was he said, "Went on a quest for Chiron." "Top secret, really? Wonder what it could be," Naruto said stiffly as he walked to the cabin, catching attention away from Percy, much to his relief. "She okay? Haven't heard from her in a month. She's missing in action. Sorry man, I can't help you there." The Aries kid replied, actually liking Naruto. Naruto grabbed Percy and drug him away, letting the Aries kid get some sleep. Percy wasn't sure, but he heard Naruto mention something about killing Chiron. Soon, they made it to Percy's cabin. It was a low gray building hewn from sea stone, with shells and coral fossils imprinted in the rock. "Listen, I'll let the Aphrodite and Artemis cabin know what is going on. Get some rest," Naruto said. "Thanks," Percy replied with a smile before walked in. Naruto nodded to himself and walked over to his usual cabin, the Aphrodite cabin, because he usually didn't stay at the Hades cabin where he was usually alone. Walking in, he smiled when he saw his other girlfriend standing before him with a smile. Hey yourself," Selena said before she flung herself at him in a kiss. "I missed you." "I did too." We basically lived together and we never went out until, well you know. But when we did get together, I had to leave. Naruto said regretfully. Selena smiled gently. Don't worry about it, you back now and that is all that matters. So what's new? Naruto smiled and debated whether to tell what he knew or not. Okay, you can't tell this to anyone. Naruto said seriously. Selena widened her eye before nodding and led them to her room. There was no one else in there, so they were safe. So what? Okay listen, those two half-bloods that Percy and Talia were told to get, they are actually my brother and sister. Yet, they don't know yet, well Bianca knows but until Dad claims them, we can't say anything at the moment. Naruto said. Selena knew who those two newbies were. She had seen them when they came after all. Now that is new, but I will keep it on the down low for now. Still, a brother and sister, great isn't it? Yeah, I was always alone back in Konoha, it is nice to have a bigger family. Naruto replied. Bigger? Yeah, I have you girls and now some blood family. Selena smiled brightly at that and kissed him again. Glad to know that. Yeah, and I am going to see if they can get into the Hades cabin before the claiming, if not, they go to the Hermes cabin. Selena frowned at that. That's going to be hard. Chiron is going to be a hard ass about it. Yeah, I figured as much. Naruto chuckled a bit, but he also has the hunters to deal with. And speaking of them, I have to inform them of the future capture the flag game the camp will play. I swear though, Talia has a plan for their little leader, Zoe, I just don't know what. Selena rose an eyebrow at that before saying, well, you better get cracking, see you later. She walked out of the room with a noticed sway in her hips, catching the blonde's attention. Man, Naruto said once she was gone. He really needed to get to know his girls a lot more. He had a good handle on Talia, but Selena and Clarice needed more attention. Only, Clarice wasn't here, something he would pick with Chiron about. Naruto was actually nervous. He was not Grover, who didn't mind getting scratched up by the hunters. Now, that doesn't mean he was a coward and wouldn't fight back, but he was not sure how to go about this. I mean, the hunters were all man-hating and he was a man, not good. Why couldn't Talia have done this? Naruto grumbled to himself as he knocked. Oh right, Talia and Zoe hate each other. The door swung open and a beefy girl answered the door. At the first look at him, she glared at him before asking, what do you want? Well, Naruto answered uncomfortably while rubbing the back of his head. I was hoping to speak with Zoe about this since she seems to be your leader when Lady Artemis is not around. You would be correct, Zoe's voice said as she came to the door and the other girl left, but not before glaring again at Naruto. Now, what do you want? Well, Chiron is setting up a capture the flag game tomorrow evening. Naruto replied with a smile, a little calmer now that he was talking to someone he was already knew within the hunter ranks. Zoe had a dangerous look in her eye as she smiled. Good, then we can win yet again with these campers. Seems like you already have this in the bag. Naruto said with a serious look as he crossed his arms. I already know we will win because we do every time. Zoe replied with a smirk. We'll see. Naruto replied in kind. Is that a challenge? Zoe asked with her eyes narrowed. Yeah, I'll show you that I can lead these campers to victory. Interest showed in her eyes at that. He didn't seem to be bluffing. Yes, we'll see about that. You're on. May the best group win. I am sure we will. Zoe replied. However, neither of them noticed until then that their faces were inches apart. She quickly backed away and closed the door with a scowl on her face. However, she did think he had nice blue eyes. Talia saw this and smirked evilly. Naruto looked confused like usual, but she had to set him straight somehow and Zoe was going to get it as well. Talia was going to be right. Dinner was okay in Naruto's opinion. While he sat with the Aphrodite kids, which there wasn't much during this time of the year. He was still kind of pissed that Chiron wasn't budging on his stance that Nico and Bianca couldn't join him at the Hades table and cabin. It was complete bull, but whatever. Oh, he could still get to know his new family, but not living in the same place and eating them is not the same. Oh well, it wasn't a total loss either. The centaur did give him some info on Clarice. It wasn't great, but at least he knew where she was. He just hoped she got out okay. Looking around, she saw that Percy looked depressed at his own table. The boy liked to think himself a social butterfly, so Naruto could understand why he was depressed. Talia seemed to be in the same boat. It wasn't always easy being the kid of one of the big three. At least the Hephaestus, Ares, and Hermes cabins had a few people each. Nico sat with the Stoll brothers, since new campers always got stuck in the Hermes cabin if their Olympian parent was unknown. The Stoll brothers seemed to be trying to convince Nico that poker was a much better game than Mythomagic. Naruto wondered if they were pranking Nico or what. Either way, he was going to lose some cash. Unless Nico has his luck, then the Stoll brothers would be losing money, again. The only table that really seemed to be having a good time was the Artemis table. The hunters drank and ate and laughed like one big happy family. Zoe sat at the head like she was the mama. She didn't laugh as much as the others, but she did smile from time to time. Her silver lieutenant's band glittered in the dark braids of her hair. Naruto smiled at that. She smile was nice, which made him wonder why didn't do it that often. When they were finished eating, Chiron made the customary toast to the gods and formally welcomed the hunters of Artemis. The clapping was pretty half-hearted. Then he announced the "Good, we'll capture the flag game for tomorrow night," which got a lot better reception. A lot of the campers cheered that and even said that if Naruto led them, they could win this time. Naruto sighed. He really shouldn't have made that challenge because Talia, Percy, and the rest of the camp basically went with it. Afterward, they all trailed back to their cabins for an early winter lights out. Yeah, it a good thing too because they were all extremely tired. However, the dreams were just more info for the blonde, and Percy as well. The dream. Annabeth was on a dark hillside, shrouded in fog. It was kind of like the underworld because it seemed like there was no sky. Percy felt claustrophobic while Naruto sniffed. He was used to it. Annabeth struggled up the hill. Old broken Greek columns of black marble were scattered around, as though something had blasted a huge building to rums. Thorn. Annabeth cried. Where are you? Why did you bring me here? She scrambled over a section of broken wall and came to the crest of the hill. She gasped. There was Luke, and he was in pain. He was crumpled on the rocky ground, trying to rise. The blackness seemed to be thicker around him, fog swirling hungrily. His clothes were in tatters and his face was scratched and drenched with sweat. Annabeth, he called. Help me, please. She ran forward. Percy tried to cry out. He's a traitor. Don't trust him. Naruto rolled his eyes. Yeah, that'll work, because they could not hear the boys' voices. Yet they could hear each other. Annabeth had tears in her eyes. She reached down like she wanted to touch Luke's face, but at the last second she hesitated. What happened? She asked. They left me here, Luke groaned. Please, it's killing me. The two boys couldn't see what was wrong with him. He seemed to be struggling against some invisible curse, as though the fog were squeezing him to death. Why should I trust you? Annabeth asked. Her voice was filled with hurt. You shouldn't, Luke said. I've been terrible to you. But if you don't help me, I'll die. Percy growled on that. Luke and tried to kill him a few times. Then the darkness above Luke began to crumble, like a cavern roof in an earthquake. Huge chunks of black rock began falling. Annabeth rushed in just as a crack appeared, and the whole ceiling dropped. She held it somehow, tons of rock. She kept it from collapsing on her and Luke just with her own strength. It was impossible. She shouldn't have been able to do that. Luke rolled free, gasping. Thanks, he managed. Help me hold it, Annabeth groaned. Luke caught his breath. His face was covered in grime and sweat. He rose unsteadily. I knew I could count on you. He began to walk away as the trembling blackness threatened to crush Annabeth. Help me, she pleaded. Oh, don't worry, Luke said. Your help is on the way. It's all part of the plan. In the meantime, try not to die. The ceiling of darkness began to crumble again, pushing Annabeth against the ground. Back to reality. Naruto's eyes snapped open and growled. He looked at the clock to see that it was just after midnight. He sighed and thought, great, Luke is still a jackass and Annabeth is in trouble. Well, looks like we better find a way to get out of camp. The next morning after breakfast, Naruto and Percy reiterated their dream to Grover. It seemed that like usual Naruto and Percy were getting help from the dream god. They weren't even fazed by the fact that they both had the same dream anymore. Currently, they sat in the meadow watching the satyrs chase the wood nymphs through the snow. The nymphs had promised to kiss the satyrs if they got caught, but they hardly ever did. Usually the nymph would let the satyr get up a full head of steam, then she'd turn into a snow-covered tree and the poor satyr would slam into it headfirst and get a pile of snow dumped on him. Naruto would chuckle to himself every time that happened. When the two demigods told their satyr friend about their dream, he started twirling his finger in his shaggy leg fur. A cave ceiling collapsed on her? He asked. Yeah, what the heck does that mean? Percy asked. Hell if I know, but are you sure we were in a cave? Naruto asked. What do you mean? Percy asked. It just seemed that it was dark to me and it was night time for us. Maybe at a tree or something. Naruto replied, making Percy think on that. Grover, however, shook his head and said, I don't know. But after what Zoe dreamed, Naruto raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Did she dream something like we did? I don't know, exactly. About 3 in the morning she came to the big house and demanded to talk to Chiron. She looked really panicked. Grover offered. Naruto's eye twitched while Percy looked at this friend oddly. Okay, I am afraid to ask that, but how do you know this? Good question. Point 3 in the morning. Percy shook his head. Grover blushed. I was sort of camped outside the Artemis cabin. What for? Percy asked warily. Just to be, you know, near them. Naruto sighed as he held the bridge of nose. So you were doing the stalker thing? Great. You're a stalker with hooves. Percy deadpanned. I am not. Anyway, I followed her to the big house and hid in a bush and watched the whole thing. She got real upset when Argus wouldn't let her in. It was kind of a dangerous scene. I bet. Naruto thought, wondering how close it was to a fight. Argus was the head of security for camp, a big blonde dude with eyes all over his body. He rarely showed himself unless something serious was going on. I wonder who would win that fight. What did she say? Percy asked. Grover grimaced. Well, she starts talking really old-fashioned when she gets upset, so it was kind of hard to understand. But something about Artemis being in trouble and needing the hunters. And then she called Argus a boil-brained lout. I think that's a bad thing. And then he called her. Whoa, wait, how could Artemis be in trouble? Naruto asked seriously. He was thinking about how Ares was being mind-controlled by Kronos. So, was it possible to kidnap a goddess? Well, finally Chiron came out in his pajamas and his horsetail in curlers and, Grover continued. He wears curlers in his tail? Percy asked. Grover covered his mouth. Oh man, the Stroll brothers are going to love this. Naruto said with a sly smirk, alarming Grover somewhat. Anyway, go on. Well, Zoe said she needed permission to leave camp immediately. Chiron refused. He reminded Zoe that the hunters were supposed to stay here until they received orders from Artemis. And she said, Grover gulped. She said, how are we to get orders from Artemis if Artemis is lost? What do you mean lost? Like she needs directions? Percy asked. No, I think she meant gone. Taken. Kidnapped. Grover replied, making Naruto narrow his eyes. Things were getting fishy. Kidnapped? I tried to get my mind around that idea. How would you kidnap an immortal goddess? Is that even possible? I thought the same. Naruto mumbled. But remember what happened to Ares? Percy froze at that. Remember their battle? Well, yeah, I mean, it happened to Persephone. Grover stated. But she was like, the goddess of flowers. Percy stated. Naruto sighed as he smacked his head on the back of the head. Springtime Percy, springtime. Percy rubbed that back of his head with pout until he saw the glare from Naruto and the offended look from Grover. Oh yeah, they would know more about that than him. Whatever. Artemis is a lot more powerful than that. Who could kidnap her? And why? Now that's the question, Naruto said as he pounded his fist. Grover shook his head miserably. I don't know. Kronos? He can't be that powerful already. Can he? Percy asked. Doubtful. Naruto said with a roll of his eyes. The last time any of them had seen Kronos, he'd been in tiny pieces. Well, they hadn't actually seen him. Thousands of years ago, after the big Titan, God War, the gods had sliced him to bits with his own scythe and scattered his remains in Tartarus, which is like the gods' bottomless recycling bin for their enemies. 2 summers ago, Kronos had tricked the group to the very edge of the pit and almost pulled them in. Then last summer, on board Luke's demon cruise ship, Percy and his friends saw a golden coffin, where Luke claimed he was summoning the Titan Lord out of the abyss. Bit by bit, every time someone new joined their cause. Kronos could influence people with dreams and trick them, but they didn't see how he could physically overcome Artemis if he was still like a pile of evil bark mulch. I don't know, Grover said. I think somebody would know if Kronos had reformed. The gods would be more nervous. But still, it's weird, you two having a nightmare the same night as Zoe. It's almost like They're connected, Percy said. Over in the frozen meadow, a satyr skidded on his hooves as he chased after a red-headed tree nymph. She giggled and held out her arms as he ran toward her. Pop! She turned into a Scotch pine and he kissed the trunk at top speed. Naruto didn't know why, but he thought that was pretty hilarious, as seen by his hysterical laughter. "Aw, love," Grover said dreamily. No, that's not love. That's more like the fangirls back with Sasuke." Naruto chuckled, making Percy shake his head before he thought about Zoe's nightmare, which she'd had only a few hours after theirs. "I've got to talk to Zoe," Percy said. Before you do." Grover took something out of his coat pocket. It was a three-fold display like a travel brochure. "You remember what you said? About how it was weird the hunters just happened to show up at Westover Hall? I think they might have been scouting us." "Scouting us? What do you mean?" Percy asked, losing Naruto a bit, who thought it was just a right time, right place type of deal. Grover gave Percy the flyer and Naruto looked over the younger boy's shoulder. It was about the hunters of Artemis. The front read, "A wise choice for your future." Inside were pictures of young maidens doing hunter stuff, chasing monsters, shooting bows. There were captions like, "Health benefits, immortality and what it means for you. And a boy free tomorrow." "I found that in Annabeth's backpack," Grover said. Percy stared at him. "I don't understand." "Well, it seems to me, maybe Annabeth was thinking about joining." "Seriously?" Naruto asked in disbelief, wondering why she would do that. Looking at Percy, he could tell the boy was hurting because he had a crush on the girl. Putting a hand on the boy's shoulder, he said, "Let me talk to Zoe." The problem was, he was not sure how to talk to the girl about this, or to help her with Artemis. Of course when he started talking with the girl, it would come to him, just like in his popfly plans in battle. Shaking his head, he went back to feed the baby dragon at Talia's tree. He had stepped in for Argus, saying he needed to do something to clear his head, and it turned out that he and the reptile got along. After a while, Naruto sat down with his back against the tree with the dragon laying its head on his lap. Closing his eyes, he thought about what he missed. What had he missed that would make Annabeth want to leave their group for the hunters? Not that they were bad, it is just an odd move for her. Ahem, came a voice. Opening an eye, he saw Zoe standing over him, looking a bit nervous with the dragon on his lap. "Can I talk to thee? That's what you are doing right now." Naruto replied with a smirk, trying to ease the tension that he felt. Zoe's eye twitched at that before a smile came to her lips that Naruto thought was cute. "I guess so. I need some advice." Opening both eyes, Naruto stared at the girl for a moment and said, "Why me? I thought you would ask another girl for advice." Zoe blushed while looking the other way. "Well, obviously one thy hunters got on the bad side of Selena, and me and Talia are not on good terms." "What about the other hunters?" Naruto asked. "They are just as lost as I am," Zoe said dejectedly. That look on her face showed Naruto that she was just like another person. She was a girl was hurting without her role model around to help her. "Ah," Naruto replied, seeing the problem. Not a lot of normal girls at camp that actually like the hunters. Go figure. "So, I am guessing this is about Artemis." Zoe blinked at that. "How did you know?" Naruto gave her a deadpanned look and said, "Your new stalker with hooves told me." Zoe pinched the bridge of her nose at that. That figured. "So he told you about my dream?" "Yeah, and I am sure Morpheus had a good reason to warn you about Lady Artemis." Naruto said nonchalantly. "Besides, the same happened to me and Percy about Annabeth. I think there could be a connection there, but I am not sure." Zoe seemed to like that answer, but was thrown off when she heard about Annabeth. What happened? Luke tricked her into holding something that was way too heavy for him, and he left it to her to hold. Question is, what? Zoe nodded. That was indeed the question, and if those two dreams were connected in some way, she was not getting it. Maybe she needed to back off for a second and cool down. Naruto saw the contemplation and said, "If you really want leave camp to find her, you could get a quest from the Oracle." I doubt Chiron would say no to that. Zoe's eyes widened at that. Why did she or the other hunter not think of that? That's great idea. Alright then, but I would wait until after game tonight. Chiron seems pretty dead set on that, and it is hard to change his mind. Naruto replied with a sigh, something that Zoe knew too well, and nodded. She didn't like it, but she agreed. For a few minutes, the two sat in silence. It was both comfortable and yet, a bit uncomfortable. Finally, Naruto came right out and asked, So, were you in Maine at the right place, right time type of deal? No, we were scouting. Annabeth contacted us and we wanted to see what she was capable of and she passed. Zoe replied honestly, making Naruto wince. However, we could see that she liked that Percy boy somewhat and that could have affected her future decision to eventually join us. Hey, I guess that is a problem since you hunters are the female version of the Lost Boys. Naruto said, getting a completely confused look from the girl. So, Naruto elaborated. They are part of a movie made by Disney about a group of lost boys with their leader being Peter Pan and they basically stay in Neverland to never grow up. So in a sense, you and the hunters are using Artemis magic to stay young forever. However, the trade-off is that you can never fall in love. Zoe blinked owlishly at the explanation. That was surprisingly accurate. I wonder if that was a copied idea from us. The blonde demigod shrugged. Probably was, not much originality in the movie department. Zoe nodded and it got quiet again. However, she got up a minute later and said, well, I best be getting back to the hunters. Thank you for the advice. No problem, Naruto said with a smile. Zoe quickly left so that he didn't see her sad expression. The trade-off, huh? Was Talia right? This feeling was new to her, but she guessed even she could fall to her emotions, especially after last time. Shaking her head, she cleared those thoughts out of her head. They were not good for her. Still, it made her wonder. Walking further away, she heard loud snort and then a scream coming from where Naruto was. Ah, hot pants, hot pants, he yelled as he ran past her with his pants on fire. He was heading straight toward the lake. Screw the roof, I do need the motherfucking water. Zoe blinked at that and looked back at the baby dragon to her that it had a confused look on its face and smoke coming out of its nostrils. Finally, she could not take it and giggled madly. However, she quickly stopped that, hoping no one heard her. By the time dinner was over, Percy was ready to beat the hunters. He tried talking with the Oracle himself, but she never responded. Especially after he looked around the attic and found the love scarf Annabeth took from him after they rode the love tunnel of death. Still, the creepiness of the place really got to him and he was seen running out of there. Unfortunately, he never saw Naruto's little problem. Zoe Nightshade looked pretty upset. She kept glancing resentfully at Chiron, like she couldn't believe he was making her do this. However, he did notice that she was sending a grateful glance towards Naruto before it turned challenging. Looking out of the corner of his eye, Percy saw that Talia was smirking and looking pleased with herself. The other hunters didn't look too happy, either. Unlike last night, they weren't laughing or joking around. They just huddled together in the dining pavilion, whispering nervously to each other as they strapped on their armor. Some of them even looked like they'd been crying. He guessed Zoe had told them about her nightmare. Still, getting a better look, some of them seemed happy, like they came up with a solution. That was all confusing for him. Changing his thought process, Percy looked over to his team, where the year-long campers were looking at Naruto, hopeful that he had a plan. Hell, even he hoped the blonde had a plan, but he was kind of jealous. Everyone looked up to the blonde and not to him. Maybe he just had to prove himself. Meh, would deal with that later. On their team, they had Beckendorf and two other Hephaestus guys, a few from the Ares cabin, the Stoll brothers, Nice, and Bianca from Hermes' cabin, and a few Aphrodite kids. It was weird that the Aphrodite cabin wanted to play. Usually they sat on the sidelines, chatted, and checked their reflections in the river and stuff, but when they heard we were fighting the hunters, they were raring to go. I'll show them, love is worthless, Selena Beauregard grumbled as she strapped on her armor. I'll pulverize them. Then there was him, Naruto, and Talia, the children of the big three. Naruto smiled seeing that his group was all revved up for this. Okay, I got a plan, he said aloud, catching their attention. Whatcha got, boss? One of the Ares kids asked. Simple, I talked to Chiron during dinner to see what the camp had done in the past. Quite simply, the hunters always play our biggest weakness against us every time. Naruto replied with a serious look. What's that? Selena asked. Our teamwork, Naruto answered. They always play on that one weakness because we are all used to being on opposite teams that we can't work together that well. This time, I want you all to put our past grievances behind us and deal with each other. I know we can win, and with the basic principle from my home village, teamwork. Now, let's show them our teamwork, let's show them our... He paused for a second to make it dramatic while also creating a small ball of fire in his hands. Will of fire? Yeah, the campers all yelled in an uproar, startling the hunters a bit. Chiron's eyes twinkled in amusement and hoped that this time they would win. Naruto seemed to know what he was doing after all. Bianca smiled from her spot next to the Stroll brothers. It seemed that her elder brother was a natural leader. She giggled when she saw Nico looking at Naruto in awe. So how are we going to do this? Percy asked once they calmed down. Naruto smiled and said, well, I was thinking this. Since I mentioned my home village, we'll be doing this as groups of 3 or 4. Ares and Aphrodite cabins, I need you to stay near the flag. The best defense is a good defense. That is why I am making you guys the protectors. Ares kids are great at fighting, and if they have something to fight for and defend, this will be great for you. For Aphrodite kids, since you have something to prove to the hunters, this is it. Back up the Ares kids. Said campers nodded with hard looks. Right, now don't just stand next to it, stay around, but do go too far and use the environment to your advantage. Next, Travis, Connor, I need you two to show Nico and Bianca the ropes and don't get them killed. Do this for me and I tell you a little secret Grover let slip about Chiron. Percy's eye twitched at that, but he could help but smile. Something like that would be enticing to them. Hey, you got it boss. Travis said with a sly smirk of his own. What do you need us to do? Connor asked. Simple, your team and the Hephaestus kids will be setting up traps for the hunters. Make sure they don't get near the flag. I am sure children of the god of thieves and the blacksmith god can think of something. By the look in their eyes, they were already thinking of some great things. Finally, Naruto spoke, we have the team that will be actively searching for the hunter's flag. That will be me, Percy, Talia. They won't expect that and it will give them pause that the children of the big 3 are coming after them. The response to that was sly smiles. Oh yeah, this was going to be good. Oh, this will be so awesome. Nico shouted. His blue feathered bronze helmet was falling in his eyes, and his breastplate was about 6 sizes too big. It was just a funny looking sight. Nico lifted his sword with effort. Do we get to kill the other team? No, Naruto responded. This just a game that some people do take way too seriously. Like you? Bianca asked, making her blonde brother smile. In a way, but this is serious. Don't kill. But the hunters are immortal, right? Nico asked curiously. That's only if they don't fall in battle. Besides, Percy answered, it would be awesome if we just, resurrected as soon as we were killed, so we could keep fighting, and… Nico, this is serious. Real swords. These can hurt. Naruto interrupted the young boy. He looked a little hurt but Naruto smiled sadly as he went eye level with the boy. Nico, killing another person, is not a fun experience. How would you know? Nico asked curiously. I am a ninja, remember? It is kind of in the job description. Naruto explained, making Nico understand. So you are just trying to protect me? Nico asked. Naruto smiled as he nodded, seeing something in the boy's eyes. It told him that he needed to hear this and that the boy needed a friend to look up to. Right now, that seemed to be him and Percy. Come on, it looks like Chiron is about to say something. Nico nodded as the rest of the group turned to face the centaur, Bianca flashing the blonde a smile. Chiron's hoof thundered on the pavilion floor. Heroes, he called. You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. Blue team, Camp Half-Blood, shall take the West Woods. Hunters of Artemis, red team, shall take the East Woods. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. No intentional maiming, please. All magic items are allowed. To your positions. Sweet, Nico whispered next to Percy. What kind of magic items? Do I get one? Maybe later. Naruto replied, not sure to tell Nico how he would get one. Seeing the opportune moment, Naruto led the campers deep into the forest, ready for anything as they tried to find a place to hide their flag. They set the flag at the top of Zeus's fist. It's this cluster of boulders in the middle of the West Woods that, if you look at it just the right way, looks like a huge fist sticking out of the ground. If you look at it from any other side, it looks like a pile of enormous deer droppings, but Chiron wouldn't let them call the place the poop pile, especially after it had been named for Zeus, who apparently doesn't have much of a sense of humor. Go figure. Anyway, it was a good place to set the flag. The top boulder was 20 feet tall and really hard to climb, so the flag was clearly visible, like the rules said it had to be, and it didn't matter that the guards weren't allowed to stand within 10 yards of it. Still, Naruto knew that if the hunters were that determined to get it, they would with ease. You guys all ready? Naruto asked aloud and nodded to himself at their loud confirmation. Good, you know your roles in this. Hit them hard and protect the flag. Percy, Talia, a question before we start this. How well can you manipulate your special elements? Okay I guess. Talia replied, not entirely sure where the blonde was going with this. I haven't practiced much. Percy replied honestly. Well, today you two are getting a crash course, in the heat of battle. Percy, when the hunters attack us, shield us with water and then use that to push them away. Huh? How? Percy asked in disbelief. How did Naruto expect him to do that? Simple. Naruto said as he picked up a handful of snow. You can control water, and while it may be frozen, it is still water. Make it work to your will like you do with normal water. Okay, I'll try. Percy replied, thinking that he could do this, but was a bit unsure. No, don't try, do. Naruto stated. Okay Master Yoda, but how does this help me? Talia asked. Well, how have you used your powers so far? Naruto asked as they made their way into the forest. Well, I can shock people with a touch and call down a bolt of lightning to my spear. Naruto smiled at that. Oh? Then this idea of mine might actually work. Naruto said with a smirk as he made his Anbu armor appear over his street clothes. Okay, here is what we are going to do. Naruto was running along the treetops while Percy and Talia ran on the forest floor. Their plan was set, he just hoped that it worked. Percy seemed so unsure of himself, but he knew the boy could do it. After all, he had a prophecy to fulfill. Soon, he felt a few presences ahead of him and they seemed to be waiting on something. That meant they were heading in the right direction. Whistling, he signaled from them to stop. What's up? Talia asked. We are not alone. The hunters are dead ahead. Naruto stated. How do you know? Percy asked. Naruto looked at the water boy and smiled. Percy, I am the son of death. I can sense when nearby people are alive or dead. Okay. Percy replied, a bit unnerved. Proceed with caution. Naruto ordered before jumped back into the trees. The two remaining demigods nodded at each other and ran forward. A mere few seconds later, the hunters attacked, trying to trip them up and immobilize them. Talia smirked as she jumped over a tripwire shot at her feet. Percy quickly dodged to the side to avoid the arrows, but thankfully, Naruto had thrown a few kunai to deflect them. Finally, with multiple cuts, the two entered a clearing where the hunter's flag stood. It was too easy, they knew that much, but Naruto had a plan. And just like he planned, the hunters jumped out of the woodwork, and blocked their path to the flag. Naruto smirked from his position atop a tree. I hope the wood nymphs don't hate me too much for this. He whispered as he threw kunai all around the hunters guarding the flag. This threw them off guard, but Phobe was it, shouted at him. Great aim. That made the other hunters laugh. What are you going to sow now? This. Naruto's voice rang out through the clearing, much like Zabuza's did in the mist. He made a hand sign and all the kunai exploded. Yep, they all had explosive tags attached them. Luckily, depending on one's point of view, the hunters all jumped back and ended up together. It was then they noticed how much trouble they were in. It would seem that while they were distracted, Percy was working his magic. He had used the surrounding snow and brought the water in the air. There was a huge blob of water hovering just above him. Percy himself looked amazing at the feat of power he had just done, and Talia looked impressed, but now it was her turn. Percy threw the blob of water right at the hunters. Talia concentrated on the feeling it took to make a bolt of lightning strike down, and it worked with a bit of effort since she was not in that state of mood at the moment. The lightning struck the blob just as it hit the hunters. The effect was instantaneous. It shocked them all into a stunned state. Well, that was easy. Naruto said as he jumped down to take the flag. As soon as he took the flag, one of the hunters tried to stop him. Zoe has most likely got your flag already. The girl said. Well, then, it would seem that I need to get to our side in a hurry. Naruto said nonchalantly before turning his attention to Percy and Talia. Looks like I finally get to use these. He said, point to his red shoes that he got from slaying the uncatchable fox. See you at finish line. With that, he was a yellow-haired blur as he took off. Doesn't he know I could have used that flying thunder god jutsu of his? Percy asked. Talia's eyes widened before she smacked her head. Sometimes, he doesn't think things through. The blur known as Naruto sped through the forest at top speed. However, he didn't have to travel for very long because it seemed he was already within their borders. Seeing this, He pulled to a stop just in time for someone to crash into him. That someone was Zoe Nightshade. Throughout this game, she thought she had this game in the bag like she always did. Seriously, she played against this camp so many times that it was not even funny anymore. They always used the same tactics against them. However, this time was different. It was a real surprise when she found the flag guarded by Ares and Aphrodite kids. Yes, they got along thanks to their parents, but when them actually guarding the damn thing, it made no sense. Usually the Aphrodite kids would stick to the sidelines and cheer. They were actually fighting her hunters. Then there were the Ares kids. She half expected them to actively go after the flag themselves or to just go look for a fight. To her it seemed Naruto knew what he was doing. That she had a thought. Who was the defending the surrounding area? There weren't mant camper during this time of year, so it must have been the children of the god of thieves and the smith god. Oh gods, that was a bad combination for anybody on the opposite side. Yeah, she felt sorry for her hunters. So that meant, the team going after their flag was Naruto's. That's why she was in such a hurry to get back to her side of the forest. Who knows what happened while she was gone? She was so into her own thoughts that she never saw the blonde enigma appear in a rather flashy blur. It was like running into a brick wall. Grimacing, she looked up to see Naruto looking worriedly at her. "Hey, sorry about that," he said as he held out a hand to help her up. She wanted to scowl and hit the hand away and get up herself, but he was not like the other guys and defiantly not like him. She wanted to keep to her normal ways so much, but he was melting away her icy shields. So she took the hand and he helped her up. "How did you get here so fast?" she asked. Shoes made from the uncatchable fox," Naruto said sheepishly. Zoe gave him a deadpanned look. Of course, the enigma would do what a godly dog could not. "So what now? I think we won," Naruto said as he showed off the flag he got with the help of Percy and Talia. It would seem so," Zoe replied, a bit irritated that she lost. This was the first time she and her hunters had lost to this camp. It was a new experience, she didn't like it. And now came the gloating. Especially with the whole camp converging on them. "Good game," Naruto said while holding out his hand. Zoe blinked stupidly at that. Okay, this was getting ridiculous. He was a good sport now too? The hell? Hesitantly taking the offered hand, she blushed lightly while looking the other way. "Yes, good game. Camp Half-Blood wins," Chiron boomed happily. He truly looked happy at this, and so did the campers as indicated by their cheering. For the first time in years, he added while crying happily. "Naruto!" yelled two voices as they glomped him to the ground. Zoe watched with mixed feelings as she saw Selena and Talia tackle Naruto and then give him a few kisses. She was confused by this until she remembered the old days where kings would take multiple wives. It would seem like Naruto was like that. As he laughed with the girls and the other campers, she felt a little jealous, but turned and walked away with her hunters, that is until someone gasped. Something was approaching. It was shrouded in a murky green mist, but as it got closer, the campers and hunters gasped. "This is impossible," Chiron said. Naruto eyed the man at that. He never heard him sound so nervous. She has never left the attic. Never. And yet, the withered mummy that held the oracle shuffled forward until she stood in the center of the group. Mist curled around our feet, turning the snow a sickly shade of green. If possible, she was looking at both Zoe and Naruto. They tested that and the oracle would just look between them when they walked apart a bit. None of the other campers dared move. Then her voice hissed inside my head. Apparently everyone could hear it, because several clutched their hands over the ears. "I am the spirit of Delphi," the voice said. "Speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python." The oracle regarded Percy with its cold, dead eyes. Then she turned unmistakably toward Zoe. "Nightshade and Naruto Uzumaki. Approach, seeker, and ask." Zoe looked nervous at that. She was used to this type of thing. Naruto smiled at her despite the situation. "Well, looks like this problem has fixed itself. Go ahead and ask." "But what about you?" Zoe whispered. "It has been happening a lot lately. Just ask her what you need." Naruto replied kindly. Zoe nodded. "What must I do to help my goddess?" The oracle's mouth opened, and green mist poured out. They all saw the vague image of a mountain, and two girls standing at the barren peak. One was Artemis, but she was wrapped in chains, fettered to the rocks. She was kneeling, her hands raised as if to fend off an attacker, and it looked like she was in pain. The other was a big surprise for Naruto as it was Hinata. She had her Byakugan active and it looked like she was trying to defend the goddess. The oracle spoke. 6 shall go west to the goddess in chains. 1 shall be lost in the land without rain. The bane of Olympus shows the trail. Teamwork of campers and hunters combined prevail. The Titan's curse must one withstand. And 1 shall perish by a parent's hand. The underworld's prince whose will breaks the ties of fate shall save others from their fate. Then, as the whole camp was watching, the mist swirled and retreated like a great green serpent into the mummy's mouth. The oracle sat down on a rock and became as still as she'd been in the attic, as if she might sit by this creek for 100 years. We win and this happens. Percy grumbled as he, Naruto, and Grover were told to bring the oracle back to the big house's attic. The least the oracle could have done was walk back to the attic by herself. But no, she froze up and went back to being a frozen dead corpse. So, even though the one, Chiron told them to do it. Oh well, watch her head, Grover warned as they went up the stairs. But it was too late. Bonk. Percy grimaced as he whacked her mummified face against the trapdoor frame and dust flew. Oh, way to go Waterboy. Naruto coughed. Aw, man. Percy set her down and checked for damage. Did I break anything? I can't tell. Grover admitted. In all honesty, it was hard to tell. Let's just hope nothing bad happens when she delivers her next prophecy. Don't want some poor camper running scared because she fell apart. Naruto joked, getting freaked out looks from both Percy and Grover before they quickly put her in her place. By the end of it they were all huffing and sweaty. For basically being dead, she was heavy. Well, Grover said, that was gross. True, Naruto stated. Wait, didn't you deal with this back in the underworld? Percy asked. He knew they trying to keep things light for him. After all, they knew Percy was still freaking out over Annabeth and with the oracle not giving him a quest, well that burned. He just hoped Zoe would allow him to go on her quest. After all, he couldn't ask Naruto. What will Chiron do? Percy asked Grover. I wish I knew. He looked wistfully out the second floor window at the rolling hills covered in snow. I want to be out there. Searching for Annabeth? No Percy, not just her. Naruto stated as he looked out the window as well. As the boy's confused stare, he said, you forget he has to find Pan as well. Oh right, Percy grimaced at that. He had forgotten about that. Grover sighed. What the Manticore said still bugs me. Something about the Great Stirring. I can't help but wonder, if all those ancient powers are waking up, maybe not all of them are evil. Well, I hope not. Naruto said as he patted the satyr's shoulder. You still have your life's ambition, so I am sure you'll find Pan. I've let the trail go cold, Grover replied sadly. I feel restless, like I'm missing something really important. He's out there somewhere. I can just feel it. Before anyone could respond, Talia tromped up the stairs. She stared at the 3 boys and stated, Naruto, Percy, you need to get downstairs. Why? They asked in unison. She did not seem panicked at all, so thing really bad was happening, right? Dionysus is calling a council of cabin leaders to discuss the prophecy, she said. And since you, Naruto, are technically the leader of the Hades cabin, you need to get there as well. The council was held around a ping-pong table in the rec room. Dionysus waved his hand and supplied snacks, cheese whiz, crackers, and several bottles of red wine. Then Chiron reminded him that wine was against his restrictions and most of kids were underage. Mr. D sighed. With a snap of his fingers the wine turned to Diet Coke. Nobody drank that either. Mr. D and Chiron, in wheelchair form, sat at one end of the table. Zoe took the other end. Talia, Grover, Percy, and Naruto sat along the right, and the other head counselors, Beckendorf, Selena Beauregard, and the Stoll brothers, sat on the left. Under Naruto's request, the Stroll brothers took Bianca with them as well. The Ares kids were supposed to send a representative, too, but all of them had gotten broken limbs, accidentally, during Capture the Flag, courtesy of the hunters. They were resting up in the infirmary. Still, they put up a good fight. Zoe started the meeting off on a positive note. This is pointless. Cheese whiz. Grover gasped. He began scooping up crackers and ping-pong balls and spraying them with topping. There is no time for talk, Zoe continued. Our goddess needs us. The hunters must leave immediately. And go where? Chiron asked. Naruto decided to answer. According to the oracle, we need to go west. 6 shall go west to the goddess in chains. That's what she said anyway. Yes, Zoe agreed, which was surprising since she was agreeing with a boy, but it seemed that Naruto was getting to her. Artemis is being held hostage. We must find her and free her. You're missing something, as usual, Talia said. Campers and hunters combined prevail. We're supposed to do this together. Zoe looked annoyed at that. Fine, I'll take Naruto since he is in the prophecy. There, a camper with the hunters. I fear the prophecy says you do need our help, Chiron said. Campers and hunters must cooperate. Or do they, Mr. D mused, swirling his Diet Coke under his nose like it had a fine bouquet. One shall be lost. One shall perish. That sounds rather nasty, doesn't it? What if you fail because you try to cooperate? Mr. D, Chiron sighed, with all due respect, whose side are you on? Dionysus raised his eyebrows. Sorry, my dear centaur. Just trying to be helpful. To be honest, that is no help at all. Naruto deadpanned, making the god just shrug his shoulders, not really caring. We're supposed to work together, Talia said stubbornly. I don't like it either, Zoe, but you know prophecies. You want to fight against one? Zoe grimaced, but anyone could tell Talia had scored a point. We must not delay, Chiron warned. Today is Sunday. This very Friday, December 21st, is the winter solstice. Oh, joy, Dionysus muttered. Another dull annual meeting. Artemis must be present at the solstice, Zoe said. She has been one of the most vocal on the council arguing for action against Kronos' minions. If she is absent, the gods will decide nothing. We will lose another year of war preparations. Are you suggesting that the gods have trouble acting together, young lady? Dionysus asked. Yes, Lord Dionysus. Mr. D nodded. Just checking. You're right, of course. Carry on. I must agree with Zoe, said Chiron. Artemis's presence at the Winter Council is critical. We have only a week to find her. And possibly even more important, to locate the monster she was hunting. Now, we must decide who goes on this quest. 3 and 3? Naruto offered. 3 hunters and 3 campers. That seems fair, Percy said, agreeing. Talia and Zoe exchanged looks. Well, Talia said, it does make sense. Zoe grunted. I would prefer to take all the hunters. We will need strength of numbers. You'll be retracing the goddess's path, Chiron reminded her. Moving quickly. No doubt Artemis tracked the scent of this rare monster, whatever it is, as she moved west. You will have to do the same. The prophecy was clear. The Bane of Olympus shows the trail. What would your mistress say? Too many hunters spoil the scent. A small group is best. Zoe picked up a ping-pong paddle and studied it like she was deciding who she wanted to whack first. This monster, the Bane of Olympus. I have hunted at Lady Artemis's side for many years, yet I have no idea what this beast might be. Everybody looked at Dionysus. He was the only god present and gods are supposed to know things. He was flipping through a wine magazine, but when everyone got silent he glanced up. Well, don't look at me. I'm a young god, remember? I don't keep track of all those ancient monsters and dusty titans. They make for terrible party conversation. Chiron, Percy said, you don't have any ideas about the monster? Chiron pursed his lips. I have several ideas, none of them good. And none of them quite make sense. Typhon, for instance, could fit this description. He was truly a bane of Olympus. Or the sea monster Keto. But if either of these were stirring, we would know it. They are ocean monsters the size of skyscrapers. Your father, Poseidon, would already have sounded the alarm. I fear this monster may be more elusive. Perhaps even more powerful. Great, we're dealing with something small. Naruto groaned. Why is it always small? His complaint went mostly unheard. That's some serious danger you're facing, Connor Stoll said. It sounds like at least 2 of the 6 are going to die. Well, unless you guys take Naruto. One shall be lost in the land without rain, Beckendorf said. If I were you, I'd stay out of the desert. There was a muttering of agreement. And the Titan's curse must one withstand, Selena said. What could that mean? Naruto and Percy out of the corner of their eyes saw that Chiron and Zoe exchange a nervous look, but whatever they were thinking, they didn't share it. One shall perish by a parent's hand, Grover said in between bites of cheese whiz and ping-pong balls. How is that possible? Whose parent would kill them? Good question, Naruto said as his eyes darkened at that horrible thought. There was heavy silence around the table. Percy glanced at Talia and Naruto and wondered if they were thinking the same thing he was. Years ago, Chiron had had a prophecy about the next child of the Big Three, Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades, who turned 16. Supposedly, that kid would make a decision that would save or destroy the gods forever. Because of that, the Big Three had taken an oath after World War II not to have any more kids. But Talia, Naruto and Percy had been born anyway, and now they were getting close to 16. Well, Naruto already was 16 and had no interest at all in the prophecy, something he voiced to Zeus. That and the blonde was born in another world. They were not entirely sure if the prophecy applied to him. There will be deaths, Chiron decided. That much we know. Oh, goody, Dionysus said. Everyone looked at him. He glanced up innocently from the pages of Wine Connoisseur magazine. Ah, Pinot Noir is making a comeback. Don't mind me. Naruto is right, 3 campers should go. Selena Beauregard said. Oh, I see, Zoe said sarcastically. And I suppose you wish to volunteer? Selena blushed. I'm not going anywhere with the hunters. Don't look at me. A daughter of Aphrodite does not wish to be looked at, Zoe scoffed. What would thy mother say? Selena started to get out of her chair, but the Stoll brothers pulled her back. Stop it, Beckendorf said. He was a big guy with a bigger voice. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people tended to listen. Thank you. Stop with the pointless bickering, Naruto said with a bored look. I can already it. We are just like our parents, always bickering. Let's start with the hunters. Which 3 of you will go? Charles suggested. Zoe stood. I shall go, of course, and I will take Phoebe. She is our best tracker. The big girl who likes to hit people on the head? Travis Stoll asked cautiously. Zoe nodded. The one who put the arrows in my helmet. Connor added. Yes, Zoe snapped. Why? Oh, nothing, Travis said. Just that we have a t-shirt for her from the camp store. He held up a big silver t-shirt that said Artemis the Moon Goddess, Fall Hunting Tour 2002, with a huge list of national parks and stuff underneath. It's a collector's item. She was admiring it. You want to give it to her? Zoe just sighed and took the t-shirt. As I was saying, I will take Phoebe. And I wish Bianca to go. Naruto mildly glared at the Stroll brothers but didn't say anything, hoping it was not a prank. I agree with your choice, Zoe. Having a tracker is good, it is just too bad the tracker is not an Inuzuka. He paused for a moment to consider Zoe's other request. I see your reasoning with Bianca. She was and probably still is in your eyes, a hunter candidate. Zoe nodded. She was genuinely surprised Naruto did not bark at her for that. Still, he acted like a brother to the girl and let her make her own choice. That was another thing. However, to see she was still trying to get the girl on her team, he was smarter than he let on. Then something else hit her. Inuzuka? Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah, they are a clan back home that have dog-like senses. So combine that with ninja and hunter tracking skills, that would make an awesome tracker. That is great and all, but do you guys think I am ready? Bianca asked, somewhat scared due to the prophecy. You'll define, Zoe commented. Yeah, and don't worry, we all will have your back, including me. Naruto replied with a smile, making the girl smile as well, relieving her fears somewhat. The other campers who had gone on a quest before smiled at her and nodded while feeling sorry for her. They felt the same way their first time. And for campers? Chiron asked. He eyed Percy for a moment, but said nothing more. Percy did see this and wondered what was going through the man's mind. Me. Grover stood up so fast he bumped the ping-pong table. He brushed cracker crumbs and ping-pong ball scraps off his lap. Anything to help Artemis. Zoe wrinkled her nose. I think not, Satyr. You are not even a half-blood. But he is a camper, Talia said. And he's got a satyr's senses and woodland magic. Can you play a tracker's song yet, Grover? Absolutely. Zoe wavered. Very well, Zoe said. And the second camper? I'll go. Talia stood and looked around, daring anyone to question her. Naruto smirked at that. Alright then you have me. Zoe nodded at that. Already expect him. Talia nodded as well. He had his ninja skills and he was supposed to save the 2 that were to die. Whoa, wait a sec, Percy said, feeling left out. I want to go too. Naruto and Talia looked nervous at that. They didn't know what to say while Chiron's eyes still studied the boy, his eyes sad. Oh, Grover said, suddenly aware of the problem. Whoa, yeah, I forgot. Percy has to go. I didn't mean, I'll stay. Percy should go in my place. He cannot, Zoe said. He is a boy. I won't have hunters traveling with another boy. You traveled here with me, Percy reminded her. That was a short-term emergency, and it was ordered by the goddess. I will not go across country and fight many dangers in the company of another boy. Naruto is enough, Zoe replied. What about Grover? Percy demanded. Zoe shook her head. He does not count. He's a satyr. He is not technically a boy. Hey, Grover protested, making Naruto laugh. I have to go, Percy said. I need to be on this quest. Why? Zoe asked. Because of thy friend Annabeth? Percy felt himself blushing. He hated that everyone was looking at him. No, I mean, partly. I just feel like I'm supposed to go. Nobody rose to my defense. Mr. D looked bored, still reading his magazine. Selena, the Stoll brothers, and Beckendorf were staring at the table. Bianca gave him a look of pity. Naruto's look basically said that was a crappy reason. No, Zoe said flatly. I insist upon this. I will take a satyr and the boy from the prophecy if I must, but not another male hero. Chiron sighed. The quest is for Artemis. The hunters should be allowed to approve their companions. Percy just looked on in disbelief. He felt so left out, but he could meet anyone's eyes. So be it, Chiron said as he wrapped the meeting. Talia, Naruto, and Grover will accompany Zoe, Bianca, and Phoebe. You shall leave at first light. And may the gods, he glanced at Dionysus, present company included, we hope, be with you. Percy, I need to speak to you, Naruto said as he walked out of the shadows. He had followed the boy into his cabin and listened to what Chiron and Percy's mom had to say. Sally was right, Percy's heart was in the right, it was just his brain that didn't work. What? Percy asked, not really in the mood to speak to him. It was childish, but oh well. That and Naruto just freaked him out by going ninja. She is right, you know. Your mom, Naruto replied. Your heart is in the right place, you just don't actually use that thing in your head, like I used to do back in Konoha. Then how do you expect me to help Annabeth? Percy burst out. Simple, let me and Grover get her for you, Naruto said with a smile before he started walking of the room. But you know, when I said use your brain, I meant it. The Stoll brothers have something against Phoebe and that shirt is a prank, I just know it. Now I would rather them not be pranksters at the moment since according to Zoe, she is out best tracker. So I am giving you a chance to get on this quest. You just have to find a way in yourself. When he was gone, Percy smacked his forehead. I am such a dumbass. The next morning, while Percy was dealing with the hippocampi, Naruto and the others left for their quest and like Naruto predicted, Phoebe did not come with them, making Naruto feel guilty that he knew about it. He just hoped Percy got his ass in gear and got with them in time. Naruto felt himself being pulled out of a strange dream. Obviously the same one Percy had. Naruto blinked the sleep out of his eyes and saw that it was Selena that woke him up. She smiled at him and said, "You're going to be late if you don't hurry up." She then gave him a kiss on the lips. "For luck, thanks," Naruto said with a smile as he made his way through the cabin. He quickly got a shower and did his morning rituals before walking out into the cool morning air. Taking a deep breath, he smiled. He felt today was going to be very interesting. Nodding to himself, he headed over to the big house, where they were going to meet for the mission. Once he was there, he raised an eyebrow at the sight. Chiron seemed to be trying to calm down a very pissed off Zoe. "What's up?" he asked as he only saw Zoe, Talia, Grover, and Bianca. He knew that Percy was going to be late. Phoebe won't be coming because that shirt those boys gave her was rigged with centaur blood. Zoe growled. That was what the commotion was about. He had been right after all. That also made him feel bad, because he knew this was going to happen. He pinched the bridge of his nose and said, "I really wish those two could have settled whatever grudge they had with her after the quest was over." Chiron nodded at that as he knew how those two were, but had the sinking suspicion that Naruto knew that was going to happen, but didn't say anything on the matter. "Right, I should go get Percy then. He did want to go on this quest." "No, we must go now," Zoe ordered. "The son of death and the satyr are enough for male traveling companions. We go now." Chiron sighed and from the look Naruto was giving him, he relented. "Fine, Argus has a van waiting for you. You may go." As they were heading to the van, Naruto saw someone watching them and chuckled. "Hey, I'll catch up. I have someone I need to talk to." Talia nodded and led the others away, but Bianca stayed behind, knowing what this was about. Nico, come on out. Wah, how did you know I was there? Nico said as he walked up to them. You forget, I have been trained in the ninja arts. Naruto said with a smirk. Oh, right. Nico replied sheepishly. What did you need me for? Look, I know you want to come, but I don't think Zoe wouldn't like it too much if another boy came along. Naruto said, making the boy chuckle a bit. But I gotta ask, why are you up this early? Couldn't sleep, so I walked around camp and heard Zoe going ballistic about Phobe's condition. Apparently, it is not just itching powder. Something centaur blood, and I was hoping to come along. I see, Naruto said as he held the bridge of his nose. That prank had gone too far. That blood was bad. Nico, if you came along, you would have to fight monsters like the Manticore? Think you are up for that? Nico paled at that and shook his head before his eyes lit up. I know who could. Percy. You and him are my heroes. I am sure he could help out. Naruto laughed. Well, if you could convince him to join us on the road, that's cool with me. He paused before getting eye level with him. Nico, there is something I need to tell you and Dad might kill me for it but I don't care. By this time, Bianca's eyes widened at the info that her big brother was going to reveal. So I was right. Naruto, are you sure? Yeah, Naruto replied before turning back to the boy. Nico, I am your brother. The boy blinked stupidly at that. What? Yeah, but until Dad can claim you, don't go yelling it to the heavens. If you want to be like your heroes, be strong like Percy, and have a sense of secrecy like a ninja. I am counting on you. Nico nodded. I will do my best. He paused for a moment and then smiled. You know, I thought you wearing to go all Darth Vader on me and said that you were my father. Naruto fell on his ass laughing while Bianca giggled a bit. After a few minutes, Naruto regained himself and said, Nico, I promise I will make sure our sister comes back alive from this. Nico smiled at that. Thank you, he said before he hugged them both. Oh, so I guess you are the one who gave us these. The boy took out a three-pronged kunai with strange markings on it. Naruto smiled and nodded. You bet, these are for me to be able to get to you when you need it the most. Just throw it and I'll be there. Nico beamed at that. Man, ninjas are so awesome. He gushed before straightening up. Thanks again, and I'll go tell Percy for you. They watched as the boy ran off. Bianca turned to her brother and smiled. You are a natural at this. That makes you a good big brother. Thanks. Naruto replied before he was engulfed in a hug. No, thank you. You are the best thing that could have happened to us. Bianca said truthfully. Naruto smiled as he held onto the girl. You two are now my most precious people, and just remember that I will do anything to protect you. Bianca beamed at that before they headed to the van. It was then that a sly smirk grew on her face. Other than your girls. Naruto spurted and blushed a bit at that, making the girl laugh at him. In a way, they were already acting like brother and sister. While it was still early morning, they had traveled a long ways to get into town and since neither Chiron or Argus filled up the van in a while, they had to get gas. So, pulling up at a gas station, Naruto got out to pump the gas. Hey, had to do it for his bike and that was a learning experience. So hungry. Grover whined. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, You didn't eat before we left, did you? No. Grover replied sheepishly. Good, neither did I, Naruto replied, throwing the satyr off a bit. We'll go and get something to eat after this. Until then, here is some money. Take the girls and see if they want anything as well. Okay, Grover said happily as he got the girls to go with him. Apparently they didn't eat either. Naruto sighed to himself as he continued to pump the gas. He had made this the perfect diversion so that they were not involved. Apparently they were being watched. So, you want to come out now or what? TCH, clever smartass. A thug-looking man said as he came out from behind one of the pumps. Usually people are not that aware in the morning, which is the perfect time to rob them. He paused as he took out a pocket knife. But you are different it seems. No matter, just give me your money and I'll be on my way. Naruto gave the man an extremely bored look. Now, it would have been different if the man had taken one of his friends hostage, but that was not the case. He could take his time with this. You know, I don't care much for robbers. Whatever, just give me the money. I know you have a lot, I just saw you give some to your friends. The robber shouted, getting impatient. While leaning in the van, the blonde looked to the dial on the pump and saw that it was almost ready. How about no? Then I take it by force. The man screamed just as the blonde friend came out. The man came at the blonde with the intent to kill, but that blonde still had that annoying bored look on his face. Like what he was doing was below him. It was infuriating. Naruto sighed. This man was so slow. Being a ninja helped, but geez, it was like child's play. So, Naruto quickly grabbed the arm that held the knife, twisted it to make the man drop the weapon, and then slammed the man's head into the side of the van, knocking him out. "Whoa, are you alright?" Talia asked, having barely saw the action. Zoe, having trained with Artemis, saw the quick movement and was impressed. "Yeah, no problem," Naruto replied as he picked up the pocket knife and pocketed it. "What was his deal?" Grover asked, a bit nervous. "Just some guy looking to rob someone. Now, let's go get something to eat," Naruto replied, not at all affected by the events that took place as he took the driver's seat. The others numbly got back to the van, not understanding how he was so nonchalant about it. Grover looked at his blonde friend as he ate his McDonald's food, wrapper and all. He just could not understand him most of the time. Sure, he was a ninja and ninja were supposed to be secretive. However, the boy was not like the ninja he knew off. Hell, the blonde was just an enigma to him and everyone around him. Finally, he could not take it. "Okay, I might not be an expert in fighting and general goings-on in the world, but I got to say this, you didn't even look worried when that guy was trying to rob you." Naruto looked at this half-goat friend and smiled. "Why should I worry?" he said, and Grover swore he heard the blonde say that in a sing-song voice. Giving the blonde a deadpanned look, he said, "Be serious. Don't give me a song from Oliver and Company." Talia, Bianca, and Zoe were listening in, wanting to know the same thing. However, Bianca and Zoe were kind of confused about the song comment. Talia gave them a look that said she'll explain later. Naruto sighed as he stared out on the open road. "I knew the guy was there. I could smell the desperation on him, and that make men dangerous. However, it also makes them stupid. So, is that the reason you sent us all inside the gas station?" Talia asked, a bit miffed. "Partially. The reason I sent you all in there was to help him," Naruto replied. "Huh?" the group nearly shouted. Naruto chuckled to himself. "Yeah, Talia and Zoe are both headstrong and would have not taken that man's crap, so they would have been the crap out of him." The mentioned girls blinked at that and nodded slowly. "Bianca, I am not sure how she would have taken the situation in Grover. You probably would have freaked out trying to protect me and everyone else." Bianca smiled and thanks. She did not want to deal with a situation like that. Grover nodded at that logic. "So you just took care of him yourself?" "Yep, as expected, my personality got to him and he charged headlong. That worked for me as I knocked him out. As for taking his weapon, I figured that was his only one and I didn't need him going after someone else on my conscience, so I took it." "That was noble," Zoe said, understand his logic and her interest in him growing. Talia noted this with a smile but just nodded to Naruto's logic. After that piece of info was taken care of, Naruto's face grew into a bored look, but Grover voiced his thoughts. I wish Argus fixed the van radio. This is going to be a long trip." Not necessarily," Naruto replied, a sly smirk. Grover narrowed his eyes at the blonde as a particular phrase from before. "Oh no, don't sing that song." Naruto pouted at that. "Oh well, I am sure there are other songs that we can sing while on the open road." "Yeah, I am sure there are," Grover replied with boredom as he looked out his window. However, there were a few things that caught his attention. They were simple noises that keys bang against each other and the tires making odd sounds on the highway. Then it hit him as words from earlier registered and Naruto started to whistle. Grover smiled as he shook his head. "That song seems perfect for the situation we are in." "Oh boy," Talia stated, catching the other girl's attention. Naruto smiled as he began to sing, "Do you need a break from modern livin'? Do y'all long to shed your weary load?" As he sang, his driving began like Goofy's. If your nerves are raw and your brain is fried, just grab a friend and take a ride. Together upon the open road. Come on Grover. Ha ha. All in all, I'd rather have detention. All in all, I'd rather eat a toad. Grover sang. Yuck, you better not let Gamakichi hear that. Naruto laughed as Grover paled a bit, but sang anyway. And the crazy blonde drives like such a klutz, that I'm about to hurl my guts. Directly upon the road, Grover said, smirking at said blonde as he drove erratically on purpose. The girls in the back were just trying to hold on to their breakfast. There's nothing can upset me cause now we're on our way. Our trusty map will guide us straight and true. Naruto. Grover could not believe he was going to reveal this, but whatever. Juniper, please don't forget me, I will return someday. Though I may be in traction when I do. Talia smirked at that as she had a feeling as to who that was. Me and Grover relaxin' like the old days. This is worse than dragon breath and acne. In a buddy-buddy kind of mode. I'm so mad, I think I may explode. Grover sang with a mock glare. When I see that highway, I could cry. Naruto sang as he wiped a fake tear away, making the satyr roll his eyes. Ya know, that's funny. So could I, Grover sang. Just bein' out on the open road. They both sang with grins on their faces. I am so confused, Bianca said as she watched from her window as a pickup truck came alongside them, making Grover's eyes widen. 3 female country singers popped out the piano in the back as some smiling guy played on it. Howdy, boys, is this the way to Nashville? Both boys shrugged their shoulders as Naruto let the wheel slip a bit. Watch it, Mac, or you'll be getting towed. A tow truck driver shouted. A police car rolled up next. I'm in no hurry to arrive, 'cause I'll be turnin' 65. The next time I see the open road. The group's eyes twitched as a small car came up with a very small man driving with a rather large woman sitting next to him. Just a week of rest and relaxation. Yeah, the lady shouted. And the odd romantic episode. The man sang. Very odd. Both Talia and Zoe said with wide eyes. They also saw a man running clothes, which Naruto recognized as Hermes, waved and sang, "It's California or bust. Look out, you dirtbags, eat my dust. From now on, I own the open road." A small old lady sang as she ripped up the asphalt to pass them, making Bianca's eyes go wide. Just me and little Grover. My pipsqueak pioneer. Naruto sang as he put an arm around his friend. What looked like a taxi rolled up near them as nuns sang along. Their car ventures forever westward ho. Yeehaw, they all sang. Could someone call a taxi and get me outta here? To Beverly Hills 90210. Grover shouted. Every day another new adventure. Every mile another new zip code, and the cares we had are gone for good. Naruto and practically everyone on the road sang. And I'd go with them if I could. Bianca sang, not in complete understanding, but it made Grover smile at the blonde. I've got no strings on me, I'm feelin' fancy-free. How wonderful to be, on the open road. Naruto closed as everything went back to normal. Zoe looked around to see that all the other driver just had smiles on their faces despite the odd display. Okay, someone needs to explain all that to me, she said, making not just the boys, but Talia too, laugh, confusing Zoe and Bianca. Yeah, how about we do that while we take a break at that museum over there? Naruto said. The group looked at the clock and there widened. Hey, time flies when you are having fun.